Stop the case of Nancy Guthrie. Are you? If you are, why and should we be? Call or text. Then we'll speak with CNN's John King on Trump's numbers continuing to fall, and PBS European travel guru Rick Steves zooms in with an Italian geography lesson for the Milan Cortina Winter Olympics and some history about the state of our fragile democracy.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then as Trump tries to access voter rolls in other states, we'll talk to Carol Rose about what the ACLU of Massachusetts is doing to protect voters here. Then State Auditor Diana DiZoglio joins with an update on her push to audit the legislature. We'll end the show taking your calls and texts. It's school vacation week again. How are you surviving, and what are you doing with the little rugrats? And if you haven't signed up for summer camp yet, you may be too late. It's all ahead on BPR Live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Civil rights leader and former presidential candidate Jesse Jackson died this morning at the age of 84. That's according to a statement from his family and the organization he founded, the Rainbow Push Coalition. In an online post this morning, NPR's Danielle Kurtzleben has more.
Trump called Jackson, quote, a good man with lots of personality, grit, and street smarts. The president also made Jackson's death largely about himself in the post, touting criminal justice reform and HBCU funding he enacted. Last year, the administration gave extra funding to HBCUs, days after cutting funding to other minority-serving colleges. Trump also complained about how he is, quote, falsely and consistently called a racist by the scoundrels and lunatics on the radical left. In addition, he managed to swipe at former President Obama in the post. 2 weeks ago at the National Prayer Breakfast, Jackson's son, Democratic Representative Jonathan Jackson, led a prayer that seemed to swipe at Trump and his policies. Danielle Kurtzleben, NPR News.
The Department of Homeland Security remains partially shut down. Congress has yet to pass a funding bill. As NPR's Barbara Sprunt reports, the stalemate continues.
Congressional Democrats sent a counteroffer to the White House late last night. Details on the trading of offers between Republicans and Democrats have been kept under wraps. Top congressional Democrats have only dismissed the White House's plan as not substantive enough. In the wake of 2 fatal shootings in Minneapolis by federal agents, Democrats are demanding significant changes to the policies of DHS, specifically immigration enforcement. The latest counteroffer comes as both chambers of Congress are out this week on recess. Barbara Sprunt, NPR News, Washington.
The board of Warner Brothers Discovery is unanimously recommending that shareholders approve the sale of studio and streaming assets to Netflix. The day for the vote is March 20th. And yet, as NPR's David Folkenflik reports, Warner is also inviting Paramount to make a best last bid for the entire company.
The Netflix deal, valued at nearly $83 billion, involves HBO Max, Warner Brothers Studios, and DC Comics. Paramount has bid $108 billion for the whole shebang, including such cable properties as CNN, TBS, and Discovery, offering sports and news. Warner has repeatedly rebuffed the bids from Paramount, which is led by David Ellison. His father, Oracle co-founder Larry Ellison, is one of the richest people on earth and an advisor to President Trump. Trump says he won't play a role, but the Ellisons have privately suggested they can get around serious antitrust concerns that have cropped up in the U.S. and Europe. Netflix retains the right to match any such offer from Paramount, but has shown no such interest in Warner's cable TV properties. David Folkenflik, NPR News.
On Wall Street, stocks are lower. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down more than 120 points. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Joy Campbell says her office needs more lawyers if the state is going to continue fighting the Trump administration. Campbell says her office has warded off federal threats to billions of dollars in funding for Massachusetts, and she's asking now for more state support given the anticipated battles that lie ahead. We need every penny, Campbell told the Joint Ways and Means Committee during its first hearing on Healey's latest budget on February 11th. The State House News Service reports the additional funds would allow Campbell to hire 17 employees to support her office's seemingly constant legal battles with the Trump administration. Campbell says her office has filed 47 suits against the Trump administration that have protected $3.14 billion out of a total of $3.3 billion threatened by the federal government. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey says she's a no vote when it comes to the proposed ballot question that would lower the state income tax rate from 5% to 4% over 3 years. Politico reports that Healey warns the tax cut could be catastrophic to the state's bottom line. She tells WCVB's On the Record that if the ballot question goes through and is approved, it'll cause a huge cut to the state's budget, adding it would be, quote, very, very harmful, unquote. More than halfway through the Olympics, and on tap today, skiing, skating, curling, and hockey. Cloudy and 40 today, 35 in Boston right now, 36 in Springfield. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Lodestar Foundation, inspired by the maxim that helping someone else less fortunate is a path to a happier, healthier, and more meaningful life. Learn more at lodestarfoundation.org. This is NPR.
Listening to Boston Public Radio on GBH and NEPM. Jim Brady and Marjorie Egan. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back here tomorrow, and then we're on a little hiatus because I need to work up some of the equipment down here. So we're going to be gone. We're not going to be here on Friday. We'll be back March 3rd. And
there's no hiatus, by the way, for the show, to be clear.
No hiatus for the show.
It's a library hiatus.
A library hiatus, that's right. We'll be back in our little cozy studio out there in Brighton. Okay, and we don't have any dates yet for the governor or the
let me tell you, by the way, before we get started, as we get close to the end of the month, if the governor, the mayor, or the attorney general have not been on, we start getting criticized by listeners in texts and emails. The mayor has been on. If you have a problem with the Attorney General or the Governor not having been on this month, don't complain to us. Complain to them. They have been very hard to commit. This is rare, but it's happening more frequently. I don't know why. But in any case, we're trying our best, and as soon as they're confirmed, maybe with your help, they'll be here. Today, the search for Today's Show host Savannah Guthrie's mother, Nancy, enters its third week today. Just this weekend, her daughter, Savannah Guthrie, posted another video plea.
And I wanted to say to whoever that it's never too late. And you're not lost or alone. And it is never too late to do the right thing.
So we're going to start today's show talking about the disappearance. I want to be clear, we are not going to allow speculation about what is happening in the case, but purely about why so many of us seem to be obsessed with it. Is it a case of what Gwen Ifill called missing white woman syndrome? Is it just because she's the mother of a high-profile public personality? Is it because of the true crime aspects? Or is it many of us feel starved to talk about anything other than Donald Trump these days? So are you among the obsessed? If you are or not, the question is why. Give us a call or a text, 877-301-8097. You know, I wasn't going to mention this right here, but in light of Donald Trump's disgusting comments about himself when trying to pay tribute to Jesse Jackson, it was just on NPR.
Yeah.
At the same time that the Guthrie family has decided that they want to appeal to the better side of at least people who know about this kidnapping, she says, it's never too late to do the right thing. What is Trump doing at the same time? Telling the guy that guys or the people that when they're caught, if she did not survive this ordeal, they'll get the death penalty, which is exactly the opposite message that the Guthrie family is trying to send. Why do you think there is nonstop? I watched a CNN show last night. The first 40 minutes were all about Guthrie with virtually no news.
You know, when they say when dog bites man, it's not a story. When man bites a dog, it's a story. And that's part of this. This is very unusual. It's not a kidnapping, obviously, because you don't have any ransom note yet, right? So there's no motive. We don't know why. This is everybody's worst nightmare. Somebody breaks into your house in a ski mask at 2 o'clock in the morning. This is an 84-year-old woman. That's also very rare. And obviously she's got a very famous daughter, and that adds to the whole thing. But I think the unusualness and how this hits home to people, was this a burglary that went wrong? Is there some grievance there? Is this some revenge kind of thing? We don't know why this happened. So I think there's all these unusual aspects, and obviously people are into it because they wouldn't be playing this story over and over and over again if people weren't fascinated by it. And then, as you said, the true crime thing. I mean, people are really into true crime stories, and people always have been. It's a whodunit thing.
877-301-8870. I'm assuming that the vast majority of you are obsessed with it, because as Marjorie said, they wouldn't be doing it nonstop all over the news were you not. And so what is the thing? The thing you didn't mention is one of the things I mentioned. I'm not sure this is conscious. I think the true crime part of it is huge. I think it's in part as painful as the story is, obviously. I think it's a break from talking about the sins of Donald Trump.
I mean, it's obviously unfair. You know, if some 84-year-old from East Overshoe gets taken from her home, you're not going to have the FBI out there, you know, by the dozens looking into it and stuff. So there's an unfairness to the amount of law enforcement attention that this case is getting. But I get, you know, why it's happening, because it's very much in the public eye.
877-301-8970. And obviously it's self-explanatory, but the missing white woman syndrome, which Gwen Eiffel came up with, is a variation of what you mentioned. It's not just ordinary people. When you look at and this hasn't happened as much this round as it should have. When you look at the number of missing people, those who get the least attention are poor people and people of color who are missing, and wealthier people, blondes in particular, white people in particular, get attention, and you add the extra factors that Marty and I have mentioned, and you have something that is not. The other thing that's really upsetting to me is that when there's no news, which there's not almost all the time, the fact that you have to fill 30 or 40 minutes to speculate totally irresponsibly or to ask the same questions over and over. We know the backpack came from Walmart for 3 days. We're aware of that. We know it may indicate something. We know they found a glove that looks like the glove that the guy was wearing when he's trying to cover the camera. Right.
And there was DNA in the house. It was not a member, did not belong to a member of the family or somebody who was normally there. So, I mean, if they can match the DNA in the glove and the DNA in the house, and then this person has some kind of record, or they have a family member who did that. What do you call those things?
Ancestry, 23andMe, whatever it is. Yeah.
Then they could get a suspect. But I mean, it's, you know, somebody just texted and they said, you know, they wish that the disappearance of other women, particularly indigenous women, this person was upset about, got this kind of attention. And it's true. Black women, poor women, indigenous women, women of color don't get the attention that this case does. But again, I think part of it is the unusualness. I mean, somebody just texted and said, this is everybody's worst nightmare. And I think it kind of is. A ski mask at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Well, like also someone who has obviously needs her meds and has a pacemaker kind of thing. You know, I'm sorry to obsess on this, but give me one more minute and then I promise I'll move on. What did Trump think? How did he think he was helping by saying in the middle of this search that if there's any harm, not any harm, if it turns out she's not alive at the end, the mother, that the guy or the guys will get the death penalty? How does that advance the cause of retrieving and finding this woman?
I just don't think there's any explanation for much of what he does anymore. I mean, I've kind of given up at this point.
Okay, 877-301-8970. We're talking about why America seems to be obsessed with the situation with Savannah Guthrie's mother.
Luke from Clinton, thank you for calling.
Hello, Luke.
Hello.
Hi.
Love the show, Jim and Marjorie. Y'all are doing great.
Thanks.
I am not sick, so I put my foil hat down, but I got to keep it near all times these days.
Okay.
I just have to say or comment in terms of just the income.
Hey, Luke, we're going to put you on hold. Luke, we're going to put you on hold for a second because your connection's crappy. Don't go away. We'll put you on hold. We'll take another call, move around the house or wherever you are, and we'll return to you after the next call in the hopes that the connection is better and you can tell us why you put down your tin hat. Hey, oops, you hung up. Call back.
Oh, sorry, Luke.
Okay.
Here's a texter who says it's the age of the woman and the familiarity of the daughter, those two things together. And Nancy Guthrie was on Savannah Guthrie's show all the time.
I didn't know
But since
that.
I have been watching this almost nonstop, I saw this great interview with one of the neighbors that talked about, or they had issues in the town she lives in, Tucson, I guess, where they had issues that Nancy Guthrie was the organizer of these, the townspeople's reaction to things, like say they were trying to not have something located in a certain place. She was the leader, and she was very much community-oriented and very much a leader in her town, too. So she wasn't just Savannah Guthrie's daughter.
You know, one thing we left out of this, which is probably the most important thing, I'm embarrassed to say, the social media obsession with this thing. That's where the irresponsible speculation comes. That's why whatever the guy is, the sheriff, had to make the statement yesterday that we have totally cleared any member of the family because there have been endless social media reports about family members. The number is 877-301-8970. Apparently we're trying Luke again. Let's see how it goes, Luke. Hello.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes, much better.
Take it away.
Yeah, great. Good. So I just want to say how awful this case is being handled by Kash Patel, and this is one of many times when the FBI and the lack of coordination and just awful handling of this is evident. Just ridiculous incompetence, and it's terrible.
What's the incompetence? Luke, what do you think is the FBI incompetence? What are you citing?
Well, let's think back to old Charlie Kirk and how somebody was detained, the wrong person, and then didn't they detain another person who was driving by, and it's also completely unrelated to the case. And then they released their information, their home, and who knows what kind of people are going to be harassing them. Their lives are definitely upturned. It's just ridiculous.
Well, I'm always willing to trash Kash Patel, but I don't know enough about what's the sheriff, what's the FBI. But Luke, stay in touch with us and update it, because it seems you're following that part more closely than we. 877-301-8970.
John from Westford thinks this whole thing is staged.
Staged?
Staged.
Meaning what? Did he explain what that means?
I
John, how about a second text? Fill us in.
It could be like, people think the moon landing was staged. I don't know.
Yeah, John.
But, I was going to say, we had Joan Donovan here last week, and she's, a genius about misinformation and all this online stuff.
Yeah.
And she was talking about all these crazy websites. And so I went to some of these crazy websites, and they have already tried and convicted people in this case. I mean, and you look at them. A lot of them are coming from Vietnam. One of them it claims to be from India. I mean, I don't know where these things are actually from, but that's kind of the social media stuff that they're talking about, which is, as we said, is totally irresponsible. And I'm not sure TMZ has been reliable in this regard.
Well, they've gotten a lot of notes. It's unclear if they're actually from people who know what's going on. But TMZ has gotten, I think, at least 4 notes, have they not? 4 emails kind of thing. And by the way, when social media was far more primitive, when the marathon attacks, remember how people were identified and lives ruined based upon, essentially sleuths, as they say, online.
My daughter's boyfriend was held for like 6 hours at the
Is that
state.
true?
I told you that. He was a veterinary student up at the place. Where is it, Grafton? And he's in the. He had curly hair, dark kid. Like,
he was held for 6
hours. I told you
hours?
this story.
I forget.
He wound up on. He was interviewed by Diane Sawyer on TV. Yeah, he's in there. He's buying some fertilizer, and he said how you notice it. Somebody big next to him, and then he notices somebody else big to him. And all of a sudden, he's got sex state strippers around him. He's thrust to the ground. They bring him down to the station. He did kind of look like the younger Tsarnaev. This is her ex-boyfriend, by the way. And also, he lived on
I'm glad you threw that in.
He also lived on the street in Cambridge.
Her current boyfriends are not looking for fertilizer.
No, she's married now. So this is a while ago. Well, it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
No, 13 years ago.
Yeah.
And but he was held for 6 hours at the state police lockup in Clinton before they released him. He lived in the same street.
John, we don't know where you are, but hello. Welcome, John.
Hi, thank you.
Yep.
I have a theory, and
we don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear it.
it.
We don't want to hear it. We're not doing what they do on TV and social media. I'm sorry. Thank you. It's not why we're here. Thank you, though, for your call, John. We are not going to take speculation, which is mostly uninformed and potentially dangerous and surely irresponsible. John, my apologies. Call another day about something else. 877-301-8970. Bob and Sandwich, welcome.
Hi, it's Bob and Sandwich.
That's why I said Bob and Sandwich. Hello.
Thank you for calling, Bob.
Lunchtime.
Hi.
Hi. I grew up in New Jersey, and I've been in Sandwich for about, it's 6 years now, right before the pandemic. And my concern, exactly what you said earlier, where we're hearing about it's a terrible shame, but there's shootings, there's missing people every day, whether the indigenous person or talking about the indigenous.
Yep.
Why doesn't that, your opinion, you're professionals, I know there's no sex appeal to it, but why don't people just take that the way it should be and share it? They wait until there's something juicy for everybody to sink their teeth into.
Well, let me tell you what my experience has been. This is not a scientific analysis. Every time there is media nonstop coverage of a high-profile person disappearing or a blonde person disappearing or a young woman, what was that, Gabby Petito? Was that her name? Well, that was obviously nonstop kind of thing. Generally, the press tries to make amends after the fact. Do you find this to be the case? And in the weeks after, they start reporting more responsibly on other missing people, particularly those who they ordinarily would not care about, as we said, poor people, people of color, etc. That doesn't fix the problem. And your first statement, sadly, was the right one. It's because it's not sexy, and it's a crime. But you answered your own question, Bob. Thank you for the call, and thanks for bringing that up.
So here's one from Mary in Maine, which is part of the attraction to this story. Some of us have been watching the Today Show our entire lives. So Nancy Guthrie, who was on the Today Show quite a bit, is all of our mothers by virtue of her being Savannah's mom. I think that's a big part of this here. And then somebody else said, my 90-year-old mother and her friends are following this and watching it nonstop, which is really sad for them. But of course, they're putting themselves in the position of Nancy Guthrie, that you're not able to fight somebody off when you're in a pacemaker, and like Nancy Guthrie was, and very ill and 84 years old. It's scary. And it's also, as I said before, it's a man bites dog. I don't mean to dismiss, and everybody's right, we don't cover, but there are so many people that are missing in general. It's not going to get coverage usually unless there's something extraordinary about it.
Well, why don't they at least put up photographs then, if it turns out, of people who, even if it's a perfunctory kind of thing, people who are missing. If you have it, instead of when they put up the phone number every single night, for example, on CNN, the local, whatever county, I can't remember what the county is, the sheriff's office in the county, and the FBI's, 1-800-CALL-FBI or whatever it is, every single night. Why can't they put up the photographs of a bunch of different women, mostly women?
Well, they could.
Every night.
They could.
I don't just mean CNN. I mean anybody.
We shouldn't just blame CNN or whoever is doing this, because the reason they're doing it is because people are watching. So it's us. We want to know about this. We're tuning in to watch this. I'm embarrassed to say, I mean, even though there was, at least it was last week, I'm getting tired of it now because nothing has happened really, except for the glove thing. But there was an entire hour. I've rarely seen an entire hour on one subject, and they did it last week on CNN.
You know what the anchors should say, if they want to be honest, on the first guest on the hour? Please tell us all the things you don't know and take as much time as you possibly would like. I mean, by the way, the nightmare for an anchor or a radio talk show host is when you have an interview on a topic or with a person where you've exhausted the relevant subject matter in about a minute. And the producer in your ear says, you got to keep this going for 17 more minutes. I've had that experience. You've had that experience. And this is what this is, because they know that the public just totally eats it up. You know. By the way, Aaron says, why is Jim so grumpy today? Every day people send in. I'm not grumpy at all. I by my standards. I don't feel grumpy anyway.
The listeners are all wrong. We must get a dozen of those a day. Why is Jim so grumpy today? Why is Jim crabby today? Why? Would you like to answer?
This aggravates me. It does. It really aggravates me. How would you know? You want to be serious for a second?
Yeah.
How would you feel if your sister, for example, who was a kid, was 27 years old, was missing, and no one gave a damn except your family, and people care about this.
That's today, Jim. What about the other 300 days that we're
There are
doing
other things that happen every day. You know what's going to be uplifting, by the way? When we have Rick Steves on today, we're going to talk a little bit about Milan. Rick gave this incredible 40-minute speech to 2,000 people at the Edmund Center for the Arts about the fragile state of our democracy that really was spectacular. We're going to talk to Rick about that. Miles, you're in Amherst. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
We're all grumpy, apparently, but nice to talk to you. How are you?
Nice to talk to you.
Good.
I think it's really fascinating. I worked in media for years, and, the fact that it's dominating the airwaves, and it is the story, obviously it's completely distressing that something like this is going on. But I think it's very fascinating that we have basically eaten all of the, airways with this story and very few updates. I feel like we're kind of advancing what's going on, but we're not learning that much, and it's a distraction from a lot of what's happening right now.
So, Miles, you have the perfect analysis. Do you watch it anyway, like Marjorie and I embarrassingly do?
I do. That's the thing.
It is the thing.
Well, I must say I'm getting a little tired of it because nothing is changing. So it's difficult to keep listening when there's
Miles,
nothing.
it's good to hear from you. Thank you for your call. Really appreciate it.
I was just looking up. Was it Natalie Holloway? Yeah, remember that one? That was in 2005.
From Aruba? Was that Aruba?
Yeah, she was this 18-year-old
who
disappeared in
White
Aruba.
Woman.
Blonde. Often the attention is on Petito was a very
blonde,
attractive young white blonde woman, and Natalie Holloway was too. But remember, it was like, was she murdered? Was she eaten by a shark? Was she murdered? Was she eaten by a shark? This went on for like days, and she was in fact murdered by a guy who went on to murder other people.
Did he plead guilty in another country?
Yeah, he was a serial killer,
Dutch
but
guy,
that was like nonstop. Natalie Holloway. Steve from Watertown, thank you for calling.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
Can you hear me okay? I'm driving.
We can, yes. Take it away.
I saw a TV show that was on that had maybe 1 or 2 seasons. I can't remember the name of it, but it starred Hilary Swank as a newspaper reporter, and she got recruited to a small paper up in Alaska to cover this exact issue. That indigenous women from Alaska went missing, and they weren't being searched
No. It was Jodie Foster. It was not Hilary Swank.
Was it Jodie
You're talking
Foster?
about Jodie Foster and True Detective, right?
No, I'm not. I'm talking about Hilary Swank.
Okay,
and there was a cruise ship. There was a cruise ship going through Alaska.
It's called Alaska Daily. Alaska Daily, Zoe tells me. Yep, go ahead.
Yes, and there's a white woman on a cruise ship that fell overboard, and the world went crazy trying to find her, but nobody tried to search for all the indigenous women from Alaska. This very topic.
We'll check it out. I'm a big fan of hers. Thank you.
And much closer to home, there were a bunch of prostitutes that were missing along 195, and it took ages really for that to get much attention. And I think it was the same unfair thing. Well, they were prostitutes, or well, they were poor women, or there's not the this could happen to me thing that I think this case has.
Well, it's almost like they deserve it. Is this unspoken sickness kind of thing.
Well, it's also, you don't think, I said, I'm not a prostitute, this is not going to happen to me, I'm not whatever, it's not going to happen to me, but you think this could happen to you or your mother, and I think that's another factor here. Anyway, coming up after this quick break, we're going to talk to CNN's national correspondent John King. I'm Marjorie Egan, he's Jim Browdy. Listen to BPR and GBH and NEPM live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, Renaissance, Race, and Representation. on view at the Alain Locke Gallery of African and African American Art at Harvard University. The show brings together more than a century of works on paper by Black American artists. Spanning the early 20th century through the Harlem Renaissance and beyond, the show explores how artists have shaped and challenged representations of Black life and culture across generations. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Brightbound. Careers aren't one size fits all, and Brightbound helps students as young as middle school identify their strengths and find careers that fit them just right. Learn more at BRITEbound.org. And MIT Federal Credit Union. Their mortgages are built around their members with personalized guidance. Memberships open to the public. More at mitfcu.org. Federally insured by NCUA, NMLS number 39923.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back here tomorrow, and then we're on a BPL hiatus for equipment upgrades. We'll return on March 3rd, but obviously the show will be on every day just from Brighton. Joined now on Zoom by CNN's chief national correspondent, John King, beyond the Great Reporting Project, all over the map. Hello, John.
I could use some equipment upgrades.
Yeah.
We'll pass it along, John.
So John King, Jesse Jackson, great civil rights leader, has passed away at the age of 84. How did he fit in to our politics? He, of course, came into second to Michael Dukakis in 88, a race you covered.
Yeah, I first met the Reverend back in the 88 campaign, and he was a larger-than-life presence. You've heard this from so many people paying tribute. He could be a pain in the you-know-what, but I say that in the best of ways, in the sense that he was a constant advocate for the issues he cared about. Sometimes when he's running for office, a constant advocate for himself. Welcome to politics. Think about all the Black voters he brought into the process. 10 million votes running for president. That was a historic number for an African-American candidate in the United States. Controversial at times, without a doubt. Poetic sometimes when he spoke. A person who, we're having debates now about whether the Democrats, do you go left, do you go to the center? These debates tend to repeat themselves. We run in historical cycles. And if you go back to the late 80s and early 90s, sparring with Dukakis a little bit. Dukakis was a liberal candidate, sparring a lot with Bill Clinton in 1992. Clinton, a more centrist candidate. And more importantly, I think if you take him out of politics, the fact that he went from the civil rights community, an activist, into the trying to win elective office was a fascinating test at the time. And so, look, some scars in his life. Welcome to life like that. But just a person who changed the trajectory of American history, American political history, in the Democratic Party.
I've read something I didn't know this morning in the Globe obituary, that he was a star football player in high school in South Carolina, got a full scholarship to the University of Illinois. But when he got there, he was told no Black kid could play quarterback. So he left, went to North Carolina A&T in Greensboro, became the first-string quarterback there, honor student in sociology and economics and student body president. So shows the racism of the University of Illinois. We have obviously quite a few Black quarterbacks now in the NFL, but he was an achiever at a very, very early age.
And just when you tell that story, it's reminding me, yes, he's an achiever, and yes, someone who fought when he was turned away, when he was told, no, those opportunities aren't available to you, kept fighting, kept protesting against injustice, which is the most important part. But to the point you made about that, the physical presence of Reverend Jackson, a big man with giant hands. He would shake your hands. He was very clear when you were in his presence that he was sort of the dominant physical person in that room, which was actually part of his appeal in the sense that he just. I always say about politicians, you can tell the good ones because they change the molecules in the room when they walk in. That doesn't mean I agree or disagree, but they change the politics of the room. That Reverend Jackson, when he walked into a room, the molecules changed. Trust me.
I was about to mention that we've interviewed him either separately or together a couple of times, but you just reminded me of something that I had totally forgotten about. One of the most beautiful photographs in my house, and I thought of this because of the size of the man, is a picture of Jesse Jackson holding my older daughter when she was 3 years old, when there was an organizing drive at Harvard. And he's holding my little kid who looks like a little speck, in his arm. And it's such a beautiful image of him and I think of my daughter. And it really has stayed with me. And I have to say, among the more impressive people I think we've sat down with through the years, I mean, obviously a huge presence from Reverend King on through American politics. And he was the first black candidate to win a primary in a presidential election, was he not? Yeah.
So what's the latest on the government shutdown? The TSA workers are working without pay yet again. I think this is the third time in not very many years.
Yeah, and we wait. So there have been proposals exchanged back and forth. I saw from the White House today that the president says he's willing to maybe talk to the Democrats. Again, let's see if that actually happens or if it's just words. The Democrats say they've had counter proposals back to the White House, what they've received from the Republicans so far. They say it's not acceptable. It is clear the fact that this is dragging on is that the Democrats don't see they don't see a political risk. In the past, they've worried that there's a political risk if you're having the Department of Homeland Security. You mentioned TSA at airports. Those workers are getting paid. I mean, not getting paid at the moment, but they're working at the moment. We'll see as we get into the work week now. We had a holiday yesterday. I think this is a conversation. If we're still having this conversation Wednesday and Thursday about an impasse, then people will start doing more political assessments because of where we are, which is about to enter primary season in the midterm year.
Are they getting anywhere in terms of masks and warrants and well, I assume they're getting somewhere on cameras because Kristi Noem said they were going to do them anyway. Are they making any progress on the merits or no?
The warrants has been a big one. The Democrats want and some Republicans want the traditional way. You have to go see a judge as opposed to this administrative warrants that most of the civil rights lawyers and civil libertarian lawyers will say this violates due process. That should be only used in extraordinary circumstances, not routinely, as ICE has been trying to do. You say they're making any progress. Again, Jim, you'll have a conversation with somebody after 3 or 4 people talk and they think they've advanced the ball, but then they take it to somebody who has to make a decision, whether that person is in the House or Senate leadership or whether that person is in the White House, and they say, oh, never mind, and they go back to it. So this is one of those things that you'll hear back and forth. You'll hear we're making progress, then you'll hear it's all collapsed. There's no deal until people are voting.
Speaking of no deal, Margie and I are looking at each other this morning as we're preparing and talking about shutdowns and the issues for the Democrats. And we both look at each other and simultaneously said, whatever happened to the Obamacare subsidy issue? Government was shut down for 43 days because the Democrats, I think correctly, decided the elimination of those subsidies was horrible for millions and millions and millions of people in this country. Neither of us have heard a peep about this in ages. Is anything going on or no?
Again, there are interested parties having conversations, trying to come up with something they could get done. But no, there's nothing, at least publicly, nothing on the surface, nothing to suggest that they're prepared to bring anything to the floor in Congress and get votes. More and more what you're hearing about is that Democrats assume that the Republicans are going to try to do the bare minimum, end this shutdown, fund the government through the end of the year, and then largely go home and campaign to try to protect their majority. It's a very difficult climate for the Republicans. I was just down in Texas in one of the districts that will be a big target down there. It's a very difficult climate for Republicans. And so the general thinking in Washington, and I know this is why a lot of people hate Washington, is do the bare minimum and get home and campaign. The Democrats, policy-wise, they would like to find a way to extend those subsidies. Politically, they think if the Republicans won't go along with some compromise plan to do that, then it's a huge issue for them and a beneficial issue for the Democrats in the election.
John, very briefly, on CNN this morning, they had a poll on critical issues, and Trump is underwater on every single one of them. And it's almost like he wakes up and says, what can I do to further alienate people on immigration or affordability or on health care? I think it's David Axelrod, Obama's guy who's on your station all the time, who once said, the hardest thing in the world is to be an aide to a president and go and tell him no. Nobody can talk to, this will make anti-Trump people very happy. Nobody, Susie Wiles, nobody can say, you got to do X, you got to do Y, because we're getting croaked. Nobody can do that with this guy, or I guess with most presidents, right?
I think in the idea of Trump, more than any other president, he has been resistant to advice like that. And there's nobody who has the stature to say, sir, just like essentially close the door of the Oval Office and not leave until you get him to agree with you. I would say this: they did retreat in Minnesota. They have pulled, so you have seen some retreats from Trump. The question is, did he do it? Is it too late? Has the damage already been done? Or is it temporary? And does it, what now if Minneapolis is calmer, does it pop up somewhere else when they're doing ICE enforcement in other places? But there have been some retreats from the president, which is out of character for him. He doesn't like to retreat. Now, he has not described them. What they've done is that we succeeded, mission accomplished, we're leaving. But your eyes don't lie about what happened in Minneapolis when they drew down the number of ICE personnel who were there. But to your point about self-inflicted wounds, listen, Republicans are in a panic about it. They think whether it's the whiplash nature of the tariffs, whether it's an asset, the immigration issue was an asset to Trump. He's turned it into a liability with behavior by ICE that even a lot of Republicans tell you just goes way beyond the pale. He's offended. I was, again, just down in Texas, and a lot of Latino voters who came Trump's way are now thinking, we agreed with the policy, but we don't agree with this, what we're seeing, that they find it offensive and they find it insulting.
Speaking of self-inflicted wounds, this may be one for Kelly Ayotte, the governor up in New Hampshire. There's been protests all around the country, even in very red states, against these so-called Trump detention centers for ICE detainees, and pretty vociferous. And there've been them up in New Hampshire. In Concord, they had one because they don't want, a lot of people do not want this detention center in Merrimack. And I guess when Homeland Security's sent a notice about the upside of having this detention center, it talked about all the ripple effects to the Oklahoma economy instead of the New Hampshire economy. And then it talked about the $10 million in local, state, and federal tax revenues, including sales tax and income tax, neither of which New Hampshire has. And then they talked about the county government, and New Hampshire's a town government. So it looked like it was a boilerplate kind of deal. But Kelly Ayotte seems unable to say if she's pro it or against it. And I don't know enough about her machinations, but it seems a lot of people, including her own constituents in Merrimack, don't want this. So
that'll be number one. We always talk about the age of AI. Do you let ChatGPT write your essays? I think at DHS they should learn that don't cut and paste, right?
Yeah,
don't cut,
really.
copy, paste. What you sent to Oklahoma is maybe not what you want to send to a state that is named New Hampshire and doesn't have an income tax like that. There's a little sort of fifth grade to that, or
carelessness.
Look, this is a very difficult political issue. Again, just in Texas, where I was I drove by a couple of these established detention centers, but ICE needs more because they don't have enough bed space. I was talking to the mayor of San Antonio, Texas, over the weekend. Same idea. They're proposing taking over a warehouse in her community and turning it into it. She's fighting it. Now, she's a Democrat, and she's fighting it. And she says they gave her the same argument, that it's going to create all these jobs. And she just started laughing. She literally was laughing, saying, number one, that's not a reason to do this. What they're doing to these people is inhumane. But number two, she would not be swayed by that. Look, you have an added complication there. That you have the Republican governor of New Hampshire, who has, you're trying to navigate Trump politics in a state, and New Hampshire resident Corey Lewandowski, at least a former New Hampshire resident, very prominent role at the DHS. But you also have the Democratic governor of Massachusetts, who's clearly trying to raise her profile at the moment, looking to the north and saying, Governor Ayotte, don't do this. We don't want this anywhere near the Massachusetts border, and you shouldn't want it on your side of the border. And so, again, we're in a midterm election year, heading into a presidential cycle, where politicians, number one, see a policy they want to grab at. I'm not making this all about politics. This is a huge policy debate in the country right now. Back to my constant Tuesday question: who are we, and who do we want to be as a people, and how do we want to treat people? But it also is a very powerful political issue. And when you see Governor Healy being so aggressive and say, "Hey, Governor Ayotte, what are you going to do about this?" It tells you a lot about the politics of this.
John, you mentioned Corey Lewandowski. We weren't going to bring this up today, but there's this incredible story in the Wall Street Journal the other day about Lewandowski and the head of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, who, I'm quoting the Wall Street Journal. Ordinarily, I don't talk about this, but they did, or apparently, what shall I say?
They're a romantic relationship.
Romantically involved. He's become the de facto number 2 at DHS, even though he doesn't have the position. And obviously, DHS is a mess, enough of a mess in Minneapolis that Trump sent Homan out there to, quote, fix, and I use the term advisedly, but at least did something, even though they're still not sharing information from their investigation, or in quotes, of the killings of Good and Preddy. Why doesn't Trump just dump these people like he's dumped others, just like Hegseth dumps somebody almost every day, and bring in new faces so he doesn't have to listen to crap about, I don't quite get it. Why doesn't he do that?
It's a great question. Now, Trump has not in this term dumped cabinet officials. And so you'd be dumping Kristi Noem there, or telling her to get rid. Pam Bondi's been under a lot of heat, including from the mega base over the Epstein files and other things. And Trump has been loyal, even though in the Homan case, he's kind of papered over the leadership there, at least for now. This is a giant conversation. I don't know anything about the personal stuff. I know it's a big issue in D.C. gossip. But back to the point we were just having about the cut and paste, sending a document to New Hampshire that quotes Oklahoma. There are a lot of competence, these basic competence questions, and then a lot of arrogance and how do you treat people questions about, where's our helicopter? You left the blanket on the helicopter, so I'm going to fire the pilot.
That was a good one.
That was a good one. All right. Again, back to the...
Wait, they had to rehire him because there was nobody to fly the plane.
He forgot my blanket. Let's fire him.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, John.
Yeah, it beats a really long walk, doesn't it? Look, we're making jokes about this, but we can talk about the specifics of so many issues, the handling of the Epstein files, what's happening. You mentioned Hegseth at the Pentagon, what's happening at Pam Bondi's Justice Department, what's happening at Kristi Noem's Department of Homeland Security. One of the things that is undermining the Trump administration, even with some of its own voters, especially Republicans who were reluctant to vote for Trump, agree with the policies, don't like the person, is the same thing that undid them in 2018 and the same thing that undid him in the 2020 election, which is the competence question. Do they know what they're doing? Are they effectively running the United States government? And again, it doesn't take a lot of people to swing elections in this country. We're that evenly divided. And in my travels, the competence question, some people raise it about different issues, but there's a big basket of competence questions growing about this administration.
John, it's good to see you as always. Talk to you soon.
John. We've been speaking with John King, Chief National Correspondent for CNN, behind the reporting project all over the map. Coming up after this quick break, an examination of American democracy from a guy who spends a lot of time outside of the United States. PBS European travel guru Rick Steves joins us for some lessons on democracy he has learned in his travels. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Falling catches.
The haddock has all disappeared. The fluke has all disappeared.
A city in crisis.
New Bedford basket, only to see each industry collapse.
And one man who saw an opportunity.
Every time it's a crisis, that's when you make a lot of money.
I'm Ian Koss, host of the Big Dig podcast, here to tell you about our new season, Catching the Codfather, a story about the rise and fall of a fishing empire. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Umbrella Arts Center in Concord, Massachusetts, presenting Harper Lee's classic To Kill a Mockingbird, live on stage February 27th through March 22nd. Tickets and information at theumbrellaarts.org. And Boston Children's Museum, presenting National Engineers Week. Activities include practicing to be an engineer through challenges and more through February Vacation Week. Tickets at bostonchildrensmuseum.org.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browder, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now on Zoom by European travel expert Rick Steves. Rick's here to tell us about the stunning location of this year's Winter Olympics in northern Italy. But first, Rick just delivered an incredible speech on the fragility of our American democracy in front of a packed house at the Edmonds Center for the Arts, where he leaned on the great blues singer Elvin Bishop, who had just performed there recently in the past.
Half the people in this country can't stand the other half. I want to know, can we halfway get along?
Rick will tell us a little bit more about his perspective as an American, often looking in on the country from beyond its borders. Rick, of course, is an author, TV and radio host, owner of Rick Steves Europe Tour Group. You can catch Rick Steves Europe weeknights, 7:30 on GBH2 and NEPM TV, and his radio show, Travel with Rick Steves, Saturdays at 6 a.m. on 88.5 NEPM and Sundays at 4 on GBH 89.7 FM. Rick, wonderful to see you as always.
So nice to be back with you guys, Jim and Marjorie.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, Rick. So before, as Jim said, before we get to Milan, you gave a real barn burner. Tell us what you had to say when you spoke about our democracy and what democracies have fallen around the world.
Well, I really struck a chord with my community. I think we had the biggest crowd we've ever seen in our history here in the little town north of Seattle. And I gave this No Kings Rally talk, and I really wanted to give it with an indoor voice, with a lot more depth. So I booked the biggest venue in town, and we packed it twice. And I gave my take on what's going on with democracy from a historical perspective and a European perspective. And it felt very good to be on stage. It was kind of cathartic for people to have somebody put into words what they've been thinking. And I'll tell you, it's 40 minutes, and it was an exciting event. It's on. You can just go to YouTube and search for Rick Steves and listen to it. And my partner, Shelley Bryan Wee, is the Lutheran bishop here, and she and I. It was a 1-2 evening, and I set it up with my What's Going On with Democracy, the Alvin Bishop thing, and then Shelley gave a 40-minute sermon on the threat of Christian nationalism, and that is something that really has to get out also. So. Both Bishop Wee and my talk are available if you just search Rick Steves on YouTube or Facebook.
Why'd you wear a purple shirt?
Oh, every time I give a talk, I wear my purple shirt because I say I'm just tired of red and blue. It's time to mix it together. Anybody that says speaking out now is America bashing is wrong. I really believe it's America loving. And I always say I miss the principal debate between idealistic liberals and practical conservatives. And it's time for Republicans and Democrats to get back to real governance, and that's compromising and listening to each other. And right now we got something more and more fundamental than that, much more fundamental than a partisan debate, and that's the very survival of our democracy. And it really is time for us all to grow little red, white, and blue spines and speak out, inspired by what's going on against ICE and the activities in Minneapolis and so on. And I really strongly believe that the Project 2025 authors assumed we would have no solidarity. And we have solidarity. And right now, if we don't exercise that power of solidarity that dock workers used in Poland to help bring down the Soviet Union, we could lose our democracy. So if we all speak out, it'll be okay. But if we kind of duck for cover, will be silenced. It occurs to me the best way to protect your freedom of speech is to use it. And right now we've got lots going on. I'd love to give the whole 40-minute talk, but I'll tell you, it's time for us to wear our purple shirts and get out there and stand tall for the democracy, the ideals that make America an inspiration all over the planet. Pluralism. I mean, imagine that. Pluralism, the ideal that different groups can coexist within one country without forced conformity. We don't think much about that, but that's a blessing that we have that here. And what now we have going on is a wannabe autocrat that wants to force conformity, so we all march in lockstep. We learned from Mussolini, and we've got to step up right now. And we're so good at honoring the great veterans that have defended our freedom for so long. Right now, the ball is in our court, and it doesn't mean anything to honor the veterans who've defended our freedom if we can't defend it right now when that is in peril.
Rick, is there a reason you're not looking at us, by the way? This is pretty weird. Is there? There you are. There he is. Thank you. Hey, Rick. By the way, let me just say, as somebody, and I know Marjorie has too, who's watched both your whole speech and Bishop Shelley Bryan Wee's piece too, watch the whole thing. This is of both of them. This is just a taste. But about a year or two ago, we talked to you at some length about your because you're an historian in addition to what most people know you as, your spectacular piece on fascism in Europe. And you mentioned a minute ago Project 2025. I think you referred to it as a dictator's playbook in your speech and then made reference to the 30s. You were willing to make fascism and Hitlerian references that some of us are nervous about doing from time to time. Why did you have no such anxiety?
Well, of course, we're not killing 6 million Jews. And of course, this is not the Holocaust. But this is autocracy. And this is extreme, it could be extreme left or extreme right, but the obvious historical references happen to be far right dictators. Half of Europe was fascist dictators in the 1930s. And all over Europe now, all over the democratic Western world, societies are challenged. And right now, for instance, in Istanbul, the mayor of Istanbul, a city of 20 million people, is in prison. He's only in prison because the autocrat running that country, Trump's buddy, Erdogan, has the same playbook. And what you do is you lock him up. You lock up your opposition. So this guy, he's sort of the Gavin Newsom, the one guy with charisma that can stand up against Turkey's autocrat. The autocrat just tossed him in jail. I was in Istanbul a couple months ago with 1 million people in the streets demonstrating, and he's still in jail. There's a monument in front of the Parliament building in Berlin honoring the 50 that Hitler locked up in 1933 and sent to his concentration camps. The first occupants of Hitler's concentration camps were not Jews. They were the Adam Kinzingers and Liz Cheneys and Mitt Romneys of that society, people that stood up for democracy. And fascists just has no time for them. They get disappeared, put into concentration camps, and then they have a playbook. And it's just, Hitler used it, Erdogan's using it, the guy down in El Salvador is using it, Mussolini used it, Franco used it. It's just, Trump decided to put it into a book. It's a 900-page book. And it's a way to disassemble, step by step, and reorganize our society. And they're doing it. And he says, oh, I was just joking. Or he says, don't worry, this is okay. But, we're going to wake up one day and find that they shot the moon, and it's too late for us to figure it out.
Well, I always say kudos to many of the federal judges. Jim wanted to get them elected. Thank God nobody listened to him when he said they should be elected. The federal judges who've had the chutzpah to stand up against Trump. There's not enough of them, and they can't move fast enough. But we talk about becoming we're an almost autocracy. I don't know. We seem to check the boxes. He's going after the universities. He's going after the law firms. He's going after the media companies. As you said, he's tried to put Letitia James and Comey, that used to run the FBI, the Fed chair Powell, in jail. He's going after journalists, obviously, trying to censor what people hear, the intimidation that he's talking about at polling stations coming up in the fall. I mean, how do we, what's the difference between an almost autocracy and an autocracy? He's like an autocrat at this point, isn't he?
You said the word, Marjorie, intimidation.
Yeah.
When they, a lot of times I would go, oh my goodness, they showed them do that in the streets to that poor man. They're squirting the, that bear spray or whatever into people's faces. They want that on the news because that intimidates the rest of us. Mussolini intimidated people right out of voting back in Italy when he invented the word fascism. He would send his thugs, his Proud Boys, to the polling stations, and they'd beat up the first person that voted, and that had an impact on the voting. We're not going to quite do that, but they're going to have their Proud Boys at the voting stations. They didn't innovate that. That's in a book. That is how you overturn a democracy. And I'm just so sad because they've got Make America Great on their hats. And, the ideals of America is what makes us great. In the 1930s, the most popular name in Germany would have been Adolf. Well, in the 1940s, the most popular name after 1945 might be Johnny and Frankie. I know so many Germans that are a few years older than me, so many French people, so many Europeans who named their children Johnny and Frankie, not Johann and Francis, but Johnny, spelled just like that soldier that freed them, and Frankie, just like that pop singer, that crooner that was so American, because America was admired in those days. And today, I'm a Europhile, and I've got so many friends in Europe. That's my thing. We have turned our back on our friends, and they're just kind of like, what the hell's going on? Let's hear Elvin Bishop again.
Well, maybe your preacher partner can weigh in this too more, but there's been a lot of writing this week about the so-called Epstein class, people who may not actually have been having sexually assaulted underage girls, but knew about it and associated with him anyway. And it's kind of like this group of oligarchs and billionaires that fly around in private planes, and Howard Lutnick, they don't have to resign from the cabinet. I mean, Trump's cabinet is a felonious bunch anyway. I mean, there's, accused women beaters and all sorts of things in his cabinet. So we have this immoral oligarchy running the company, doesn't really care about the working man, and the tech heads like the Tim Apple and as Trump would call him, or Zuckerberg, etc. But then you have the American people, as we saw in Minnesota, with the courage to stand up. So it's kind of a great juxtaposition, between the lack of the billionaires with no courage or morals, and
the billionaires. The billionaires cannot be elected without the moral. The people with the wedge issues, the culture war issues. Yeah. So they stoke up the culture war just enough, and they depress the vote just enough to eke out an electoral victory. But when you think about oligarchs, I mean, just look at that way. The salary of a president is $400,000 a year. And at a very conservative estimate, on the first year of his second term, President Trump has made $1 billion. That's 2,500 years of his proper salary. 2,500 years, and half of our country celebrates that like he's a good businessman. History will have a tough time not just smirking at what the United States did when we squandered our democracy if we don't get our act together. So, again, it's time for us to speak up and stand out. And I like the thought that anytime we show solidarity, like when Europe showed solidarity in the favor of Greenland, or when Minneapolis showed solidarity in front of their liberties, solidarity is powerful. And I'm inspired by solidarity. I've been teaching it for decades in the sense of other countries, south of the border or against the Soviet Union. But solidarity is a universal tool that the people can use to stick up for their civil liberties. And the United States is learning now the importance of that solidarity. And people are speaking out now a little more boldly than they have in the past. But, it's an exciting time to be involved, and it's an important time to realize that if you think that's scary for us to be talking about what we're talking right now, that means it's more important for us to be talking about it than ever. When I give a speech anywhere around the country, I step out into the lobby afterwards, people say, Rick, thank you for speaking out. That took courage. My first thought is, if that took courage, it's high time we all started speaking out, because it should not be a courageous act to speak out in favor of the ideals of America.
By the way, for those who have not watched Rick's speech yet, and by the way, Milan is going to have to wait, it appears, and it will, till we speak to you next. Rick ends his speech after having said, which is true, and we should remember, most of us never had to fight for our democracy. He doesn't just talk about what's troubling him, and hopefully most of us, but also how to deal with these things, including, March 28th, when there is the next No Kings
rally.
Yeah, put that on your calendar. And I think you'll be fascinated if you can tune in for my talk that I gave, and it's about just the plight of democracy in America. And again, you can search for it on YouTube, and it pops right up if you just type in my name. And then right next to it is Bishop Wee's talk about Christian nationalism. And Christian nationalism is an affront to anybody who's a person of faith. It's just they're turning God into a political mascot. And it's just, it's part of the playbook. I mean, there's Muslim nationalists on this planet. There are Hindu nationalists that are using their faith against their people. And 100 years ago, Jesus was an Aryan hero in a fascist society called Germany.
Yeah, I love the blue-eyed, blonde-haired pictures of Jesus. I think they forgot he was from Palestine. Yeah. Hey, thank you very much, Rick, for joining us. We much appreciate it.
It's
and
good
great
to speak
talk.
with you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Too.
We have been speaking with European travel guru Rick Steves, owner of the Rick Steves Europe Tour Group. And as you just said, you can catch his whole speech and his partner's speech on Christian nationalism Rick Steves on YouTube. Just look for that. It'll pop right up.
And her name is Bishop Shelley Bryan Wee, W-E-E.
That's right. And you can also catch Rick Steves Europe weeknights at 7:30 here on GBH2 and NEPM TV, plus his radio show, Travel with Rick Steves, Saturdays at 6 a.m. on 88.5 NEPM, and Sundays here on GBH at 4 o'clock.
You know why I'm glad we ran out of time? Because I was going to say how beautiful Lake Como is. How embarrassing would that have been after what he had to say? Thank goodness.
Yeah.
I was rescued.
Bye, Rick.
See you, Rick.
We say
Be
goodbye
well.
to those of you listening on NEPM, but make sure to tune into the fabulous 413. They start this afternoon at 3 o'clock. The show continues here in Boston. After this quick break, the ACLU of Massachusetts, Carol Rose is going to join us. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Do your part to support the programs you love by becoming a GBH Sustainer. Sustainers make easy monthly donations that keep the news you trust on the air, month after month, year after year. Enrolling is simple at gbh.org/sustainer.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Bonsai Bar, hosting pop-up beginner bonsai workshops at breweries across New England. Hands-on classes provide guidance in the basics of bonsai design and care in a group setting. More at bonsaibar.com. And Mass General Brigham. In heart surgery, expertise matters. Mass General Brigham Heart and Vascular Institute performs thousands of surgeries each year and is committed to research and innovation. massgeneralbrigham.org/heart.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Thank you. We're going to be back here tomorrow, and then we're on a library hiatus. They need to fix some equipment here at the library, but we will be back. We won't be here Friday, and we'll be returning on March 3rd. Hello again, Jim.
Hey, and I got to repeat what I said at 11 o'clock because we are getting texts and emails criticizing us for not having the governor and the attorney general on. It is not for lack of trying. I don't know what's going on. We have not gotten response to invites for their February appearances. In either case, Mayor Wu, who is a monthly guest, did appear with us. If you'd like them here, see if you can do better than we do, and give them a buzz. In any case, we're joined now live at the library by someone who did show up, Carol Rose, Executive Director of the Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts. Hello, Carol.
Hello, it's great to be here.
Nice to see you as well.
So give us the update on Trump's effort to take voter rolls in Minnesota, Massachusetts, blue states, all around the country. What's happening and why?
Okay, so, I mean, this is a really, not surprising, but still upsetting effort by the Trump administration to bully states including Massachusetts, but also 40 other states, into handing over our voter rolls to the Trump administration so they can go through them. And it includes amazing things like our Social Security numbers and our addresses and all these other kinds of things. And our Secretary of State, William Galvin, did the right thing and said, pound sand, we're not going to give it to you. And so the Trump administration, the Department of Justice, has filed a lawsuit against Bill Galvin and the state of Massachusetts, which they're defending, and the ACLU has filed as an intervener. So we've joined the lawsuit on the defense side, which is kind of unusual, on behalf of Common Cause and Jane Doe and some individual voters. And so we're there along with the Elias Group. They've also filed to intervene on behalf of NAACP and some other groups. So there's a lot of us coming together as we should, to stand strong against these efforts to take away our voting rights.
Here's what I'm worried about, because the Trump administration obviously is a law-breaking administration, constitution-ignoring administration. All this can be illegal, but does that even matter? And will the lawsuits be settled in time that he just won't take these things and say, drop dead?
Well, he can't just take them.
Well, he can't take them. So that's the thing. So, I mean, and I was wrong. It's 23 states.
Yeah, 23. Well, why can't he?
Well, because he doesn't have physical access
to them. Might put Bill Galvin in jail.
Well,
Might do that.
That might happen. That might happen to a lot of us. But I think at this point, the most important thing is that we don't turn these voter rolls over. And by the way, in the states, like I think Oregon and Michigan and California, the courts have ruled against the Trump administration.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think we're on incredibly solid ground. And I know that people say, well, they just ignore the courts. Well, they don't actually. I mean, they might appeal and delay and
They
make it
ignored all
very
those
hard.
court orders in Minnesota. What is 60 court orders they ignored out
Right,
there?
but they're not over yet. So I mean,
Okay.
part of it is the wheels of justice turn slowly, but they are churning, and the ACLU is at the forefront to make sure they do.
You said California, Oregon. Oregon, Marjorie, was the case that Andrea Cabral brought up last week, where the
Yep.
judge, whose name I can't pronounce, in my Kasubai, I believe it is the one who wrote, the Justice Department is no longer entitled to presumption of trust and integrity.
Because they lie so much.
They've lied. I mean, that is almost
It is.
unheard of.
I'm just afraid when people say, well, it's illegal, the states run the elections, that he's done so much that's illegal, that the fact that it's illegal to take over these elections isn't going to get in the way. But you're saying we don't have to worry, people are not going to hand over these voter rolls.
I do think we have to worry, and we have to fight back. So part of it is, yes, we should worry. I mean, he's going to try every way he can to undermine the election from, they've tried gerrymandering. They're trying, which we're fighting against. They're trying to seize the voter rolls. They're trying to put in new ID
Well, Democrats are
requirements.
gerrymandering too, in all fairness, in response.
Right.
They are. Can we stay on this for a second? And the argument as to why I believe the federal government is making why they need this voter information. And by the way, if you don't understand, this is not the public stuff. Are you a Democrat, a Republican, an independent, and what's your name and address? Social Security, driver's license, intimate sort of
welfare,
stuff.
people that are getting on money
This
from
is
the state.
allegedly because huge swaths of non-citizens are voting in these elections, which is, I think Utah, which is one of the states I think that gave, I'm not sure if Spencer Cox gave the information or not, there were 2 people in the last 2 federal elections. 2 in the whole state.
It's almost unheard of.
It's almost unheard of. So it's a total scam.
It's a total scam. It's a total red herring. They're trying to use fear, which is what they do, and then to attack vanguard states like Massachusetts, where we uphold democracy and voting rights and things like that. So
But
I'm really proud I'm proud of Galvin for standing up to that. It actually takes a lot of fortitude, political courage and fortitude to fight back, and I'm glad that he's doing it.
But Marjorie made, in a related note, this SAVE Act that they're doing, which passed the House, hasn't passed the Senate yet, which would require you to provide proof of citizenship to register. I'm not sure if you needed to vote too, but to register at least. Marjorie made the point last week that it positions the Democrats in a tough spot, even though, well, you should explain in a minute why it's so hard for so many people to get that kind of proof.
Right.
But a huge percentage of voters, including Democrats, support voter ID. And when the Democrats stand up, I think on principle, to say this is a problem for the reasons you'll explain, that accrues to the benefit of Trump, who is trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist.
Right.
Again.
So he continues to say that there's voter fraud when in fact there's a minuscule, de minimis amount of voter fraud. It's really not an issue. And so they're coming in and saying we should have a voter ID, which, the ACLU doesn't agree with, I don't agree with, because how do you prove all of these things?
Voter ID,
well, that's
isn't
the
it?
thing. And so what they're requiring is you have to have a birth certificate or a marriage certificate or a passport. And like for women who changed their names when they got married,
69 million of them.
69 million women are going to be disenfranchised. I mean, that may be part of the MAGA agenda, but it shouldn't be the part of the rest of us, the patriotic Americans.
I think you were talking about separating them out. I think when people find out what the SAVE Act, America Act does, they think that's ridiculous. But I think the problem is, as you said, that most people think just having an ID, either a social security card or a driver's license, something but it doesn't show citizenship, it just shows you have a driver's license.
Right, and you may take your birth certificate in, but if you changed your name when you got married, then what do you do? Do you take your birth certificate and your marriage certificate, and you have to do it in person? I mean, this is all just ways to try to prevent people from voting. And of course, it's going to disproportionately disenfranchise people who don't have enough money to travel and therefore don't have a passport.
But politically, I think it does hurt the Democrats. Because I think most people think that you should have some ID when you go vote. So that's kind
because
of
they're
the dilemma.
confusing what's really being demanded, as you
Yes.
said a minute ago, and just the notion of having a driver's license or a non-driver's ID, and that sort
Well,
of
if you
thing.
separated it out and there were a different bill than this, it would tamp down a lot of the arguments about cheating it.
But we don't have a problem of cheating. So here we are trying to come up with solutions for a problem that doesn't actually exist.
Right, but you see these polls this morning that Democrats and Republicans now are thinking that the elections are rigged,
but
for different reasons.
I understand, except for that the polls, you can get the answer that you want depending on how you frame the question, right? We all know that. Like, do you believe that to prevent voter fraud, you should have to show an ID? Well, that sounds sensible, right? But when you say, do you believe that when there's no voter fraud, you should have to get your birth certificate and your marriage certificate and your passport and everything else to show up? Well, no, nobody actually thinks that that's a good idea. And beyond that, it's not the Constitution's very clear that it's not for the federal government to run elections, it's for the states. And we do a really good job here in Massachusetts and in most states because there is so little voter fraud. So again, this is just an effort to try to, scare people from voting, make it harder for people to vote. And of course, what we should be doing is trying to make it easier for everybody to vote because that's what a real democracy does.
So let's stay with this for just one more second. As I said, the House passed this. It's unclear if there are enough votes in the Senate.
Right, they need
if there are
60.
enough votes in the Senate, which is unlikely, but let's assume there are, Trump obviously signs it in a minute. It's March, maybe even April.
Right.
What happens in November?
First of all, groups like the ACLU will go into court and challenge it and try to get a stay and try to get an injunction to prevent it from going into effect before the election. But if it does, it's going to be really hard, and we're going to have to really work with people to mobilize to make sure that people can exercise their franchise. But I personally think the courts are going to shut it down.
Okay, we're talking to Carol Rose from the Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts.
So, Carol, you got a great lawsuit there in the ACLU, which was detailing some ICE mistreatment of more than 80 people. I'll give a couple of examples here. This one woman, 29-year-old in Minneapolis, talked about being hit in the head with a metal gas canister, like being hit with a metal bat. Then this other person was beaten with a baton. Then this other person was following ICE agents when her car was surrounded. Agents broke her window, dragged her from her vehicle. And then this other tactic that they're using more and more, which is face recognition of people, getting their license plate numbers, and then going to the person's house that had been legally protesting ICE. It's to the point where people are afraid to go home and they're going to restaurants for 3 hours.
Right.
So what are you hoping to do with this suit?
So first of all, as people know, there's an ACLU office in every state in the country. And so our allies, our colleagues in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, have just been amazingly courageous and really put under the gun. And I just want to give a shout out to them because these are real people who are being impacted, who this is happening to, and then real people who are taking their depositions and helping them see it through, and then filing the lawsuits on their behalf and trying to challenge this. And so it takes all of us working together to fight back, And I always say democracy is a muscle, and the more we exercise it, the stronger it gets, right? But I have to say that what's been happening in Minneapolis is shocking to the conscience, but it's shocking not only to those of us who pay attention, but I think to the average person across the country, seeing what's happening and seeing the people of Minnesota across the board standing up and saying no and being so patriotic. I mean, that's the kind of patriotism that Rick Steves was calling upon all of us to exercise. And I hope that when and if Homans and the Department of Homeland Security do what they threaten to rain hell down on Boston, that we'll be the same way. And I just have to say, Boston Strong to me means Boston standing up to that kind of anti-patriotic, anti-democratic abuse of power.
Do you believe this guy has the nerve at his alleged exit press conference, because as our buddy Margaret Sullivan says, talking about inappropriate headlines in her column this morning, when people just say, federal government to leave Minnesota. We don't know that they're leaving Minnesota. We know that Homan said they're leaving, and Trump said
they're not leaving Minnesota.
They're not.
Homan had the nerve, after what happened to Renee Good and Pretty, to say this was a successful operation, not to mention what it meant to small businesses, traumatizing thousands of kids and neighborhoods and all that sort of stuff.
That's not success.
And
that's authoritarianism.
And here's what, I know you've praised, I saw some of your statements. You praised these local officials and governors, Healy, Wu, we had Brett Smiley, the mayor of Providence, on, who have by executive decree or order, done things. But do we have time? No, I'm not going to play it, because when we asked Wu and Smiley, for example, they acknowledged these things aren't really enforceable, like not going on. We said to Wu, goes on city property, which your executive order prohibits. What do you do? And Wu said it's our intention to explain what the law is, but they can't enforce this. So here's the question I'm now obsessed with. A California court last week said that it is, which I thought was not going to be the decision, it is perfectly fine to ban masks on federal law enforcement if you ban masks on every layer of state and local, which incredibly the California legislation had done. In light of that statement by a federal judge, why isn't every state and city rushing now to do what a federal court has said they can do, which is take off the damn mask?
Right, and also put on the body cameras and the badge and make it available, and the name and the badge, and that we do have in Massachusetts.
What's that?
We do have that. You have, the officers are supposed to wear their badges.
Even the federal officers?
Well, Massachusetts. But I think we should pass that legislation in light of this court ruling out of California, because what they said is it's fine to require federal agents to wear masks as long as you also require state law enforcement to do so. So now, what Gavin Newsom has said is he's going to go back and update it and make it required for everybody. But I agree with you. And there is, I think, a bill pending in the state legislature that would do that. And I think now that we have this okay from a federal court in California, we should do that. And there's no reason we wouldn't do it for state as well as federal, because they're to serve and protect us, not
State legislature just called and said they're going to do it on the day of my funeral. That's when they're going to pass that. That's when they're going to pass that legislation.
I hope that's not soon. I'm just going to put it out.
No, I'm sure it's not going to. Well, I hope mine isn't going to be soon. Theirs isn't going to be soon either. We're talking to Carol Rose.
So, piece of the Globe the other day about having speed cameras for those people that are going. It'd be limited, but it would be speeding by construction sites and school zones. What do you think?
Margie's against it, I should say, not for the principle. Believe me,
I'm okay. I'm okay with
principle.
Construction sites and school zones. I'm a little concerned about speeding on the Mass Pike is a different matter.
So I would say two things to that. First of all, there have been a lot of studies that have been done that show that it actually can increase the number of accidents, because people because people come to a really abrupt stop. When I call it orangish yellow, when the light is orangish yellow. Now people speed through, then they'll stop, and then it tends to cause more accidents. So first of all, from a does it actually work perspective, it's not clear. But I think the other thing to really pay attention to is really where are they going to put these? I mean, if they end up putting them in communities of color, but not in white suburban communities, if they end up putting them in, places where they want to, target people. So it really depends. The devil, as always, is in the details. And so whether or not these things are going to be effective, or whether they're going to enhance racial disparities and possibly enhance accidents, I think we need to spend a lot more time getting the details.
Can we not talk about speeding cameras, but talk about cameras in general? I have to say, I was probably as against cameras all over the place as you probably are for most of my career, such as it is. I have to say, this is painful, particularly in front of her, to have to make this admission. When you see, admittedly, these are private cameras, we would think that Mr. Preddy was a domestic terrorist and came there to kill fully, whatever they said about him. That Renee Good, whatever the adverb was used by Trump, ran over had it not been for private cameras. Now, admittedly, they're private cameras, but I have to say, I'm beginning to flip on the notion.
Do you want to flip on elected judges too?
No.
I mean, he thought that was a great idea. I think these judges would be standing up to Trump if they were elected.
Let's just pick those two cases, Good and Preddy. Were it not for admittedly private cameras, we would be left with the notion that two people were killed by federal law enforcement officials because they were trying to do horrible things
and it
for them.
And it was the ACLU of Massachusetts, attorney Sarah Wunsch, who filed and won the first right to, on the Glick case, the right to record the police and the performance of their official duties as long as you don't interfere. So that was the first in the nation back in,
huge.
It was huge back in 2011. So we won that right. Reason. What we have been concerned about are police or government getting access to cameras without a warrant, without probable cause, just because they want to spy on somebody. They want to track their ex-girlfriend.
In public places.
But they still need a warrant. Like, why should you can't go over and just pull a camera from somebody because you want to, right? So you don't want to have a situation where somebody could blackmail somebody because they saw them going into an abortion clinic or going to mental health care or having an affair or or stalk their ex-girlfriend or something like that. So part of it is you have to have restrictions on how it's used and how it's accessed. It can't just be, because I'm a police officer, I get to go and pull cameras
You don't
wherever
think
I
the
want.
genie's out of the bottle on this one?
No, I don't think it is.
Well,
I think we still have warrant requirements. I mean, there are lots of things that people can do, but if a police officer wants to do it, they have to get a warrant. And I think having a probable cause warrant requirement on accessing that doesn't prevent us from stopping crimes, but it does prevent us from having
So say,
abuse.
for example, the shooter down at Brown University that killed all those students and killed the professor as well. They had a lot of the people with the rings or whatever they got,
Ring
and the
cameras,
Nest
yeah.
cameras. So that that would mean the cops could go to those people's houses and said,
yes, of course,
with a warrant.
Well, and even
No,
in
I'm
an
talking- I wasn't talking about that.
in an exigent I mean, if you're literally chasing a murderer, you can probably go get it and get the warrant later.
Okay.
Right. So, I mean, I just don't think that there's any reason that we have these due process protections that they prevent us from investigating crimes or catching the bad
Okay.
guys.
What were you
what
talking
they do
about?
is
I'm talking
prevent
about
us
public cameras by a city or a town or whatever.
Well,
You
they're
don't
all
like
over
that.
the place. They're in Coolidge
I understand
Corner.
they're there, but she has a problem with them, and I always have had. I have less of a problem because if those two courageous women hadn't videoed, as I
Right.
say, courageously and brilliantly, the killing, I would
Yeah.
say the murder of Mr.
But
Preddy,
a few years ago,
we wouldn't know.
the Coolidge
And-
Corner camera in Brookline caught a red pickup truck. It stopped and picked up a woman and raped her, too. I thought that was pretty good that they were able to see him because he was
Yes,
at the corner of...
But those are circumstances where you can get a warrant. So
Right.
we're not opposed to
No,
having
but what
the
if it
cameras.
was-
We're
I
saying
don't-
that you just can't have it and then just say
Wait a
it's
second.
just open
Forget
for
those
anybody.
two women. They didn't have phones with them. What if there was a camera on the wall of that corner
You
where
can go get
Preddy
that.
was killed?
Yes, you could go get that camera footage.
Wait. So we're talking about two different things. You don't have a problem with the camera. You have a problem accessing what's in the camera.
Who gets access to it?
Oh, fine. Then we're in the same place.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
No,
Okay.
it's a question of having.
Okay, fine.
It's a
I'm
question
sorry,
of having
misunderstood.
procedural protections
Fine,
in place.
that's fine. Okay, last thing, which is the most terrifying of our whole discussion to me, there's a piece in USA Today that says, based on just circumstantial evidence, that one of the two oldest justices on the Supreme Court, who happens to be one of the two most right-wing justices on the Supreme Court, the
Right.
flag-flying family, the Alitos, has a book coming out in October, and tea leaf readers are saying other Supreme Court books have come out in September, so that it gives the justices time to go promote their book before the session starts on the first Monday in October. The fact that it's coming out in October suggests to many people that Alito is going to resign in a timely fashion, meaning soon, let's say
Right.
effective later this year, so that Trump still has the Senate so he can confirm another Thomas or Alito, unlike what
you're worried
happened
about a Justice Bondi?
with Bader Ginsburg. No, well, I'm worried about a baby Alito or a
Yeah.
baby Thomas.
Well, you should be.
Who's 45 years old, who can serve for 40 years.
Yes.
If they do it, they do it, right?
If they do it, they do it. I mean, you know, in contrast, you know, the Democrats should have done it
With Merrick
and pushed
Garland.
it through. But yeah, with Merrick Garland, with lots of people. But you know, they have a right to. If they're playing by the rules, we can't really object to that. We may not like it, but we can't object.
So how we only have a minute left. Is the ACLU working on any of those proposals about expanding the court or those sort of things?
We appear in front of the Supreme Court more than any other organization except the Department of Justice
Is that true?
itself.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I mean, we're arguing the birthright citizenship case on April 1st in front of the Supreme Court. So we are in front of the court so much. So it's a bit of a conflict of interest
Why
for
is
us
that a
to get
conflict of
involved in
interest?
saying, change the court. We
Why
don't
is
like
that a
the court.
conflict? You
Well,
may
because
aggravate them, but why is that a conflict?
Because we want to win. We have an obligation to our clients.
That's a good point, Carol.
That's a good
I'm with you.
That's an honest answer.
Thank you very much, Carol
Carol
Rose.
Rose, it's good to see
Here's
you.
to winning.
Yes,
Here's to winning.
absolutely. We've been speaking with Carol Rose, Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties
wait,
Union.
one more thing.
Who
I'm
always
sorry.
like lifts my spirits. You know, you make me
She
feel like
does?
I shouldn't be quite so depressed as I am.
Because you like that muscle flexing democracy.
I like the muscle
thing.
flexing,
Before you
absolutely,
go,
Jim.
I also read a piece last night saying the tariff decision, which is huge, is going to come out Friday. How do
That's
they know
what they're
that?
saying.
How
I
do they
don't
know
think-
that?
You know, people have been saying it's supposed to be last Friday, the Friday
Okay,
before.
so
I
they
mean,
don't know. Okay.
we'll see when it comes.
Okay, thanks.
All
Sorry.
right, great. Thank you. Great
Good
to be
see you,
here.
Carol.
Thank you, Carol. Carol Rose is Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union in Massachusetts. Thanks again for coming in. After this quick break, State Auditor Diana DiZoglio updates her on her continuing efforts to sue the state legislature over her efforts to audit them. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Experts like biologists, chemists, and physicists are increasingly relying on artificial intelligence. New research suggests AI is helping individual scientists advance, but what about the field as a whole?
There's kind of a narrowing of science around what it is that these tools can do and what they enable scientists to do.
AI's impact on scientific inquiry, on All Things Considered, from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Explore New England. This original documentary film series explores the region's great outdoors through a variety of activities, including camping, biking, paddling, and skiing. Available on YouTube and Roku or explorenewengland.tv. And Seasons 4, the outdoor living store in Lexington, featuring over 100 styles of outdoor furniture delivered throughout New England, plus a wide selection of plants, statuary, and garden accessories. Spring events in progress. Seasons4.com.
Welcome back to BPR. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Now joined on the line by State Auditor Diana DiZoglio. After spearheading a ballot question centered on transparency, specifically auditing the legislature, and winning 72% of the vote, it hasn't happened. You all know why. We've talked about it a lot, so has she, obviously. Here to explain to us a different route she is taking to try to implement the popular will. And by the way, we should acknowledge she announced this morning she's running for re-election as auditor. Congratulations on that, Auditor DiZoglio, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jim and Marjorie. Happy to be back.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Diana DiZoglio. I'm sure that your legislators up there were thrilled to know that you were running again for office. But tell us about this different route you are taking to try to get the will of the voters honored.
Yeah, so obviously, as you all know, we face tremendous pushback on the audit of the legislature from legislative leaders. Our Attorney General has been unwilling to represent me or the people on this matter. So we went ahead and we filed with the Supreme Judicial Court anyways. We filed as just our office with our own general counsel, citing the unwillingness of the Attorney General to represent us on this matter, citing the reality that she's also blocking us from getting a special assistant attorney general of our choosing, and asking the courts to intervene in this circumstance where we don't have another path to court. And if the AG is going to continue to block us, essentially we're asking them to intervene and appoint a special assistant attorney general for us. It's worth noting that while we've been talking about having various attorneys potentially represent us in this case, I do just want to formally put out there that Attorney Shannon Liss Reardon will actually be the attorney we are asking the judge to appoint as our special assistant attorney general. We were, speaking with some other attorneys who had offered to, have the costs of this case covered by an outside entity. And even though they cleared that with the Ethics Commission, we just feel as though the Attorney General has tried to turn that into a distraction from the underlying issue, which is that we need representation in court. So Attorney Shannon Liss Reardon has actually offered to make that a non-issue and resolve any of the AG's concerns with that outside payment being made to George Vienne, who had offered to be our attorney, paid by Mike Minogue. And Attorney Shannon Liss Reardon has said that she will actually just offer to do this for free, not take any money from anybody else, not charge the taxpayers a dime, and just represent our office and the people on this matter in court. So we're excited about the opportunity and prospect to get this issue before the justice, the single justice. And, please send me all your best wishes, because really we're living on a prayer right now.
By the way, we should say, and if you listen to the show, every single month we bring this up with the Attorney General. In fact, most recently, former federal judge Nancy Gertner offered her services to serve as a mediator between the auditor's office and the Attorney General. The auditor said yes, the Attorney General said no. The Attorney General continues to say, we don't have to debate this today, that the questions she needs answered by Auditor DiZoglio have not been answered. Obviously, DiZoglio says she has. One last thing is, our understanding through this is the only way any constitutional officer has the right to go to court in this state is if the Attorney General either represents them or agrees to appoint an outside counsel to represent them, but only she has that power why is the SJC not going to say, we're not going to hear your case because you don't have a right to use your own counsel to come before us. You have to use the Attorney General or nobody.
Yeah, they could say that, Jim, but we have no other option besides to petition the SJC to do what's right on behalf of the people and to recognize that the Attorney General is acting capriciously and scandalously by refusing to allow us to even have our own attorney represent us. We're actually following the lead of State Auditor Rob Sand out of Iowa, who successfully brought to his court system the fact that his GOP Attorney General was refusing to represent him when he was seeking information, get this, about settlement agreements. You know how much we've talked about those here in Massachusetts.
Yes, indeed.
He was attempting to do his job and get access to documents. The Attorney General out there refused to represent him, so he took it to their high court over there and asked for him to be able to get representation, to represent himself, and the courts granted him that opportunity. So there is a path forward. We do need to prove that the Attorney General is unwilling to represent us or afford us the opportunity to have representation by somebody else. I think that we have that with the over 150 pages that we've released where we've repeatedly answered questions. I'm hoping that the judge sees that and that we can move forward with this to get this issue resolved on behalf of the residents of the Commonwealth.
Auditor, we really appreciate when the Attorney General agrees to her February appearance. We will obviously bring this up again. Auditor, thanks. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.
You too. We've been speaking with State Auditor Diana DiZoglio. Coming up after this quick break, on the heels of a new Globe story about signing up your kids for summer camp right now in the middle of winter, we'll open the lines to get your thoughts on childcare when school is out, like this week, for example. How are you surviving yet another week off for your children when you have to go to work and earn a living? I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH Live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
What does swimming have to do with college? Most students would tell you not much, but at MIT, it's a graduation requirement.
Now we're going to go down and put our chin in the water. The first classes were just breathing, getting underwater, trying to float, and then you eventually progressed into different strokes.
I'm Kirk Carapezza. Why MIT keeps its controversial 80-year tradition afloat online at gbhnews.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Johnson & Wales University, offering 3-year bachelor's degrees that combine academics with career preparation, helping students enter their professional fields sooner. Learn more at jwu.edu. And PNC Bank, who believes when you pay attention to the details, amazing things can happen. Like when you check the pockets of a jacket you haven't worn since last fall and find $20. PNC Bank, brilliantly boring since 1865.
Welcome back to BPR. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. One more time, we're back here tomorrow, and that's it. We have a library hiatus for equipment upgrades through. We return on March 3rd, but there will be a show every day. It'll just be from Brighton. So far this winter, kids in the region have already had several days home from school due to the weather, just a few short weeks after the holiday break. It's also, as many parents are aware, yet another week of school vacation. So this segment goes out to all the parents of school-age kids just trying to make it through the winter. Give us a buzz or a text at 877-301-8970. On top of childcare for the immediate term, a new Boston Globe article Marjorie referenced highlights the struggle of parents trying to get their kids into summer camp, with spots already filling up now in February. So you better be on your game during this break. You'll be paying for it, so to speak, come July and August. The lines are open for a parenting helpline. How do you parent and work when school's out yet again? And when your kids ask you why you're not jet-setting off to Vail or Disney or the Virgin Islands like Jane is, what lame excuses do you give them besides admitting you should have married for money instead of just love. 877-301-8970. And if you're staying home, do you plan on every single minute, or do you say, forget it, let the kids lie in bed, learning loss, be damned?
Okay.
877-301-8970.
This is one of my many crusades. I haven't gotten far on this. I've been trying to
What's
crusade.
the crusade?
Well, there's too many vacations. 14 weeks. 14 weeks. Most people get 2 weeks off per year. Most everybody has to work right now in Massachusetts because it's so damn expensive to do anything.
Yeah.
So here you are working. Maybe you get 2 weeks off. Maybe you're lucky you get 3 weeks off. 14 weeks of school vacation. So what are you supposed to do with your kids? Schools should be in school longer. They should be in school for a whole. We don't need 10 weeks in the summertime. We could have much shorter summer vacation. We don't need. What do we need February vacation for, Jim?
A
We just
break.
had vacation.
We need a break.
We just had one in December, and we're gonna have another one in April.
By the way, you obviously have not read the Boston Globe, because
Okay.
rather than whining about
Yep.
how difficult it is, the Boston Globe mentions millions of things you can do. For example, you can ride the Ferris wheel on the Greenway. And when that's over, you only have another week left to figure out what to do with your kids.
Yeah.
You can actually, it says take cooking classes. My friend Tracy Chang's at Pagu.
That's true.
You can. This one is the most unbelievable. The Galleria, the Cambridge Side Galleria, which ain't what it used to be.
It's
it
improved.
used to be years and years ago, not now.
Take your life in your hands.
You had to go armed if you
never
went
know.
to shop at the Galleria. Let's be honest about that. You really did.
Things have improved.
Not anymore. It's fabulous.
Not anymore.
They have life-size depictions of Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel.
I know. I was very
in
impressed.
the Galleria.
Well, it's Cambridge after all, Jim.
No, I'm serious. That's unbelievable.
This is by Cara Baskin in the Globe. She said what you could do is you could just go to the Cambridge Side Galleria and let your teens go to Sephora all day long, and that would take care of everything. But the problem is if you have younger kids and you can't really let them loose in Sephora or anywhere else. She also suggests that once you finish Heated Rivalry, you might need a spicy, icy love story. How about Penguins? A love story, which apparently premieres at the New England Aquarium. But here's the thing. It's
By the way,
really,
can I say one thing?
What?
Because we had a day off yesterday,
Yeah.
thanks to me.
Yeah. Thanks to you. That was thanks to me. Thank you very
Whatever.
much.
You know what I watched after bad-mouthing it?
Heat of Rivalry.
I watched all 6.
Hubba, hubba, hubba.
It's fabulous.
It was fabulous.
I was so wrong. I have to admit it.
Yeah,
I was really,
it was really good.
really
And you know what
wrong.
it is? And it's got a happy
great.
ending for a
Oh
change. We
my
all need
God,
happy endings.
was I wrong?
So that's
I'm
my
sorry, go ahead.
crusade. And by the way, the summer camp story, I mean, it's true. If you want to get into one of those snazzy summer camps, I think you're too late already for next June. But if you might even be too late for the town recreation, which is the poor man's
Or the
answer
Y.
summer camp.
My kids went to the Y. Your kids went to Y camps too, right?
Summer Well, my daughter went to this great overnight camp up in a YMCA camp up in New Hampshire.
Oh.
No.
Mine went in Western
Massachusetts.
Mass or
It was on the
Central
George Mount Washington up there. Yeah, it was
Whatever
a
it
great Y
is.
camp. Y camps are cheaper, but they're still expensive.
By the way, it's expensive.
They're
in New York.
overnight.
If you hire an agent, you sell your house, you'll have plenty of money to be able to afford summer camp. The number's 877-301-8970. Can we focus more on this week? Because this is what the immediate issue is for people in pain. It is already Tuesday, so what are you laughing about?
What I would do is hire a hardworking immigrant to help out. Oh, wait, we deported them. Never mind.
Okay, fine.
And then from Medford says, school should be year-round, period. And then another texter says, shouldn't you crusade for more vacation for everyone else instead of only 2 weeks, as opposed to more time in school? But seriously about the school thing, I mean, the kids lose a lot over the summers. I mean, that's been known for decades, right? That a lot of learning is lost.
What is the reason for February vacation? What is the point?
That's a good
As
question.
you say, everybody was just off for 10 days or 2 weeks during Christmas. Then there was snow thrown in, which obviously varies from year to year. What is the point?
I don't know. I don't know. It must be the teachers union's fault, Jim. We'll blame them for everything. It's easier to get the Newport Folk Festival tickets than a slot at popular summer camps. Some fill up in minutes in January, says a texter. Somebody else is complaining. Marjorie's first day back from her 3-day weekend. She wants to take vacations away from the kids.
That is true, by the way. No, by the way, it's not taken away from the kids. It's her animus towards the teachers union that motivates everything Marjorie does.
So our number is 877-301-8970. What are you doing? I mean, if you have in-laws nearby.
Who said this? Wait. Who just went on Google AI? Was it you? Zoe? Google AI says blame Jimmy Carter. Apparently, it all started in the 70s due to efforts to conserve oil. Was that the notion? Close the schools? Was that what they're saying?
I guess so. I mean, it probably made sense then, but it doesn't make sense anymore. So the number is 877-301-8970. What do you think? What are you doing with your kids this week? If you have in-laws, that's why it's always a good idea once you have children to move near your family so you can hoist the children upon the family when you have time off. Or you're not incredibly organized and coordinated so you can get other parents and do a sharing kind of thing.
What'd you do when your kids were young?
They went to the after-school program at the school.
That cost anything?
Yes, it cost something, and you kind of felt that's the problem. I mean, I'm not going to.
Oh, you don't go in the guilt thing. You can't have it both ways.
No. It's if we were talking about this summer. If you live in a middle-class town or a wealthy town, where people are going to like Aruba, and they're going to Costa Rica, and they're going to Belize, and you're sticking your kid in the after-school program at school, you feel like there's a little stigma there. You know what I mean? I felt a little bad about that because my kids grew up in Brookline, and once they got rid of rent control in Brookline, man, it was all over. It became very, very expensive. So that's what I did. But it's not, and it's great, but you feel a little bad about it.
877-301-8970. Let me tell you on a serious note here, one of the stories must have been in the Globe. The DCR, Department of Conservation and Recreation, is that what it's called?
Yes.
Has 86 programs, educational programs, whatever that means, this week that are available if you just go on their website. That's a positive thing, do you not
Well,
think?
the thing is, a lot of these things are things that mom and dad can do with the kid, as opposed to the kid doing it by themselves. I don't know if those recreational programs allow the 7-year-old to go by themselves, but they probably don't. By the way, Jim, we're also getting a lot of texts about your mood today. Did you see these texts?
Well, because that one guy said at the top of the show I was grumpy when we started talking.
Yeah.
And apparently that's all people
A lot of
care
people
about.
have weighed in. Mary on YouTube says, grumpy is Jim's default.
What's her
Anonymous
point?
texter says, does Jim seem grumpy today? Is the Pope Catholic?
Oh, that's so funny. That makes me laugh.
And somebody else said, no, Jim seems unusually happy today. I guess because that's
That makes Marjorie happy
grumpy
too.
such
Can
the
we
rest
take
of the
some
time.
phone calls?
Yes, Carol from Framingham. Thank you for calling.
Hi, Carol. Welcome.
Hi, thanks. This is my second time calling.
Well,
you guys are great.
Thank you.
Thank you. We agree.
I just walked into the conversation, and I know it's not exactly what you're talking about, but I just want to remind everybody that people say, oh, the teachers, they have these great jobs with all this vacation.
Marjorie
But
says
if
that,
you're going to increase the amount of time that we go to school, then you've also got to increase the teachers' salaries because we're paid for the time that time that we're working now. And it's hard to get increases in those wages, and I don't agree with you completely about the teachers' unions. They have their pluses and minuses, but without them, we would be, it would be dismal.
But 14 Carol, 14
Without
weeks.
them, it would be dismal, Carol said.
14 weeks. I mean, come on. That's a lot.
Yeah, no, I mean, you could, I'm not opposed to change. I think both kids and teachers really look forward to the vacations. It's one of the reasons that I took the job. It's one of the perks of teaching. It's one of the few.
Carol, can I make a suggestion?
Well, you don't have to pay for your own kids because you're on vacation with them, so it's a great perk.
Next time you call
Yeah,
in.
no, it is. And there's a lot of downsides to teaching, too. It's very hard. You don't get paid a lot, and the hours are long, way beyond the day. I never, ever stopped working when I got home. I had a long night of prep work and so forth. So
Marjorie doesn't accept that. By the way, Marjorie, who is basically trying to screw the teachers, Carol, works 2 hours a day. Are you aware of that?
2 hours a day.
2 hours a day she works.
You guys are great. You work hard and you do a great job. But teachers, they work really hard, and both teachers and kids look forward to the vacation. That doesn't mean that you can't change it. I'm just reminding you that if you do change it, you've got to pay teachers more. You got to pay them more proportionally to what they're paying now.
You said it brilliantly, and you said it beautifully. Thank you very much.
It was beautiful.
By the way, apparently Nicole put a poll up on YouTube. 52% of people on our YouTube poll says Jim does not appear grumpy today.
But listen to this, and you won't be grumpy anymore.
What's that?
A texter says Jim is actually looking pretty thin.
I did lose a few
You're
pounds.
looking pretty good,
We can't
Jim,
say why. I'm not
says
taking the drugs.
texter.
I'm not taking the GLP-1.
You're not taking the
which
drugs.
is fine, by the way. I'm not criticizing. I can't tell you why I've lost a
We've
few
all
pounds.
noticed.
It's too embarrassing.
Jim has slimmed down.
I can't. Okay, why do you bring that up?
He watched Heated Rivalry. He decided he wanted to get in shape.
Why don't you have your little kids watch two guys having sex for 6 hours? By the way, can we talk about? They have the best bodies, like in the history of the world.
They really do.
Oh my God!
No, they really do. If you haven't seen it, it's quite a hit.
Kathy and Olsen. By the way, nobody is interested in this topic. They're interested in me. Nobody, because listen, Kathy and Olsen. Not only am I grumpy. Sorry, Kathy and Olsen. Sorry, Jim. We all knew it was Marjorie who asked for the day off yesterday. Good for her. Hope the whole BPR team got it off well-deserved.
We did. Well, here's a little behind the scenes. I've been lobbying for the 3-day weekend for what, 5 years?
7 years,
7
years, yeah.
7 years, 8 years. So, like everybody else.
About the listeners.
So we would come into the building, the entire building would be empty, and we would be there, and Carl's security guard would say, hey, wow, you're the only people in the whole building today. And I said, some people like to go away, like on Columbus Day weekend, or they like to go away on President's Day weekend, 3-day weekend. Okay. It's a great sort of energizer. And Jim put the kibosh on it for years, and poor Jared, I think he ended up working yesterday because he didn't know we were taking the day off.
Well, let me just say, it is only when I assented to it that it happened. Is that correct, yes or no? I mean,
Jim was voted down. True. We took an anonymous poll of the staff, and everybody wanted it except for Jim.
See, you started something that I resent. Anonymous texter, Jim is slimming down so he'll be able to sit at a Fenway when baseball season starts.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, since nobody cares about this.
And that's why Jim is grumpy, because of the slimming down.
The world is a mess.
He hasn't had as many snacks
he should be grumpier.
as he usually has.
Can I tell you something? In light of the fact that nobody cares about our topic.
I know. Why does nobody care? I think this is a big deal.
I don't care that they don't care, but I'm going to tell my story about the Cambridge Side Galleria.
Okay.
And again, we're not talking about the Galleria now. It is a fine, wonderful place. Many years ago, when my kids were little, I used to take them to the Galleria all the time. And as I said a couple of minutes ago, and Marjorie, I think you'd agree with me, if you went to the Galleria unarmed, you were making a mistake. Can we agree? So one day I went, my kids were 6 and 4 at the time. 6 and 4, I think they were. And we're riding down the escalator. And there are a couple of teenagers on the escalator. This sort of fits the mood there, who are using foul language around my young children. So I politely turned to these 2 teenagers and said, excuse me, gentlemen, we have kids here and there are a lot of kids. Could you tone down what you're saying? And I said it really nicely. And what did they say to me?
F you.
F you, yeah. At the top of their lungs. Now, I'm still not done.
Did you say it was the escalator where
it was the escalator.
You went by each other, you're going down, they're going up kind of thing, so you pass each other on the way?
Very warm. Now, we're not done. So in light of the fact that Margie and I would almost always say you have to go armed to the Galleria, the guy who owned the Galleria got really upset and called our boss.
That's
remember?
Right. And we went over there.
And he said, I'm going to give you a tour to show you how safe it is.
With Billy Stewart, remember?
Okay, right.
Former Boston police officer.
Right, who you know, the Stewart family
He's a great
from the
guy.
Cape or whatever
That's
it is.
right.
Didn't he play hockey or something?
His brother played
in the NHL. Okay.
Billy was the police
referee.
Officer. Paul Stewart was an enforcer for the Boston Bruins for quite some time.
Okay, so we go to have this tour of the Galleria, and we did it because our boss is our old boss.
West Roxbury family, by the way.
Good, fine. So we expected that one of 2 things would happen. We'd get a free meal. Did we get a free meal?
No.
Did we get any swag?
No.
Nothing. But we were really polite because our boss, I'm not done with the story yet. Here's the deal. So the guy said it's a different thing. It isn't violent anymore. You don't have to worry about anything. No one says F you anymore, etc. Fine. So we had a nice visit. After the visit is over, Marjorie leaves. I go to Lids by myself after we've had this thing to buy a baseball hat. I buy a baseball hat. I'm carrying a bag from whatever I was carrying. As I'm leaving, a security guard who's 22 years old, remember, it's a new Galleria, a security guard stops me and says, what's in the bag? And I said, none of your business. I have a receipt for the hat I have on my head. The 22-year-old slams me up against the wall in the Galleria. So
Jim, that's terrible.
It was terrible.
Was he the same guy we saw on TV and working for ICE now?
That's a good one. That's funny. But the bottom line is the Galleria is a whole different, wonderful thing now, and you should go see the Sistine Chapel or some such thing. Okay, I'm done. Nelson in New Bedford. Well, this guy's been waiting.
Okay.
Nelson in New Bedford.
Hi,
Sorry
Nelson.
for that story. I had no choice. Hello, welcome.
Great story, Jim. I loved it.
Thank you. It wasn't that good, but I had to fill
great
time.
Story.
Go ahead.
I am an engineer, and I'd like to talk to Marjorie about salary.
Yes.
Please.
And because I switched from engineering to teaching when I had little girls almost 20 years ago.
Oh.
And I cut my salary in half to teach, from $100,000 to $50,000 a year.
Go ahead.
And part of the reason I did that is for the hours. Now, teaching is way harder than I thought it was, but I love it. I still do it. Had I stayed in engineering, I'd still be making twice as much, incrementally, probably $200,000 a year like my friends do. So I think if you want to switch what the teachers are working or how the system works, there's an entire thing to address. And the teachers union is not nearly as strong as you make it out to be. There are many people who get fired for tiny reasons. There are people who get this. I used to work when I was an engineer in making large buildings. And the construction union is really strong, protects the employees. I love them. The teachers union is not nearly as good, not nearly as strong. I don't know what happened to you, Marjorie, when you were a kid. Please forgive them. Teachers love you. It's not, whatever they did, they didn't mean it. It was an accident. It was an off-the-cuff remark. Your hatred of teachers is a little strong. We're doing our best. I promise.
Nelson, can I tell you, I was grumpy for an hour and 45 minutes till you called. And now I'm on cloud nine.
Okay, Nelson, I don't hate teachers. I want teachers to make more money, which is why I believe teachers should get merit pay. I think somebody who's an engineer who goes to teach in a school, it should not be $50,000 a year. It should be much more like $150,000 a year. And I'm sorry you work in New Bedford. You don't make much money in New Bedford, but you do make about 120 in Boston. You do make about 120 in Brookline after you've been there for 10 years. So the salaries there are not that bad. But the big thing is, I think there should be merit pay. Great teachers should get a ton of money, and not so good teachers should not.
Yeah, who's making that decision? Nelson.
Well, Jim, that's the most ridiculous argument of all time.
Nelson, that was the highlight of the month.
Yeah.
Thank you for your excellent calling out Marjorie for whatever it is kind of
it's
thing.
just like people make decisions in every other professional thing. It's not. It's the boss makes the decisions. Isn't that how it works, Jim?
Should we get merit pay, you and me, or what do you think?
I think we do. It's the equal. We get
exactly the same.
Yeah.
And some people think, some people think you may be a tad better at this than I am.
Or they may think that you're a tad better than...
Not that many, but some do.
Yeah.
So should we have our boss deciding which of us is better at what we do and pay us more?
Well, we're co-hosts.
Why is that different?
Because we both do the same thing. Because I'm not an engineer with an expertise in math and science and that kind of stuff.
Not?
And we're sort of the same skill kind of thing.
Who wrote Make Jamie Decide? That is not happening, believe me, because we know
Carl
who
from
gets
Seattle
the merit
says
pay.
she saw a smile from Jim when told that he looked
Why'd you even bring
thin.
that up, by the way?
Oh, another texter says, I miss the jubilant, joyful, and slightly roly-poly Jim.
Oh, that's so funny. Can you see me laughing right here? Look at Jamie like a fool
somebody else.
over there laughing.
I tell you, people are really into this. Anonymous texter, I like Jim just the way he is.
Okay, fine.
Maybe slightly less grumpy, though. And then another texter.
Oh, please keep reading.
Why does everybody pick on Jim?
Okay.
He's so lovable and kind all the time.
Okay, fine.
There you go.
Okay, as we're leaving the event, we're going to get to Edgar in 1 second. When we're leaving the Umbrella Arts Center the other night, and we were met by that woman who you took a picture with, I left earlier. What did she say to you?
I don't remember. What did she say?
Call her up and we'll discuss it tomorrow.
Oh,
about the two of us.
I think she said, I interrupt you all the time. Is that what she said?
Exactly.
Yeah, I tell you.
You are the problem.
Talk about out to lunch.
We
I don't know.
love
She was
that
a lovely woman.
And I think she's a teacher, which is even better.
She's a teacher.
Okay, Edgar, whatever. Hello, Edgar. How are you?
Hello, Jim. Hello, Marjorie.
Hi.
Marjorie, you are an engineer. You're an engineer of words, an engineer of the mind, an engineer of narrative. Give yourself some credit here.
Okay, that's very
Even
nice
if you
of
do interrupt Jim all the time.
Okay,
I do.
Now, we're not going to ask you the question we asked listeners because none of the listeners answered it either. So we're just going to ask you, what are you doing on that show?
Well, I got a question for you two. Have you been watching the Olympics, just in general?
I have.
I only watch when I hear. Well, I shouldn't say why.
Oh,
I watch
now I want to know.
Well,
I watch the speed skaters, the giant slalom. The poor guy, the great skater.
That's what I watch because I felt so bad for
what's
the
his
kid.
name?
Ilya.
Adorable blonde kid that fell.
Ooh,
yeah, he looked like the guy in Heated Rivalry, didn't he?
Tough.
Okay, why'd you ask that question?
Well, we're going to be talking about the Olympics, but in the spirit of the Curiosity Desk, we're gonna kind of go down to the below at the bottom of the ballot, and we're going to talk about biathlon, which is something that a lot of people don't really speak that much about. When I talk to people, I'm like, biathlon, and they're like, what's biathlon? I'm like, it's a Winter Olympic sport, and they're like, really? And I'm like, yes, it's cross-country skiing and shooting. Which sounds
a lot
bonkers,
of people I know do that.
But it's absolutely. No, but it's an interesting sport with a long tradition. And did you know this? It is the only Winter Olympic sport in which the United States has never medaled at all.
Wow.
So we're going to learn a little bit about it.
That is incredible, actually. Never.
We should be good in that sport.
Riflery was my one thing at camp.
Jim was the most improved camper twice in a row. What do you think about that, Edgar?
I think that I am not surprised.
Excuse me.
There you go.
Edgar, we'll be listening.
Edgar, thank you
Maybe.
very much.
Thank you.
For listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Thanks to everybody who came down to the Boston Public Library. You can keep up with this 24/7 by way of our podcast or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. I want to mention that we are going to be here tomorrow, but we're not going to be here Friday. We're not going to be back to the library after tomorrow until March 3rd because I need to do some improvements to the equipment
You
here.
should also announce this. In the last segment tomorrow, we're also going to do another segment that nobody cares about.
I know,
So
I'm
that'll be
shocked. I
at
cared about this
1:35.
deeply. I'm obsessed with that subject. Anyway, you can lord it over me, Jim, when we're done.
Believe me, I will.
Okay, we're going to have
Soon.
the culture shows. Jared Bowen is going to be here, Boston Globe tech writer Hiawatha Bray, NBC Sports Boston Trenny Casey, with a dispatch from the Winter Olympics, which I love. Have you been watching them?
A little.
Really?
A little.
How can you not watch the
I
pair
like the
skaters?
summer love. That's pretty. I did watch the
Yeah.
ice dancing, too.
Okay, Zoe Matthews,
Whatever.
Nicole Garcia, Hannah Laws, additional support from Ronan Keane. Our engineer is John the Club Parker. Our executive producer is Jenny Bologna. Thanks to our BPL staff, Maddie Gara, Angelica Marrero, Juan Jose Cadena, our host at the Newsfeed Cafe, and across the street at the Lenox Hotel. The Curiosity Desk with Edgar B. Hurwitz III, we just saw him, starts right after us, and Jared's Culture Show starts at 2. He'll speak with Uli Lorimer, Director of Horticulture at Native Plant Trust, on how the snowpack is good for the environment, wildlife, and makes for a stronger spring. I'm Marjorie Egan.
Jim Browley.
Thanks for tuning in. Hope you have
Bye.
a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
From the stories of centuries past to discoveries that will define our future, How Did We Get Here's, how-tos, and more. Journey with us down the rabbit hole on the Curiosity Desk. Coming up next on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the law firm of Davis Malm, taking care of your business from startup to sale. Learn more at davismalm.com. Davis Malm. Lean, agile, strategic. And GM Roth Design Remodeling, providing custom kitchens, bathrooms, and accessory dwelling units. Their design team works to create living-in-place solutions tailored to the needs of each home and family. More information at gmroth.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Edgar B. Hurwitz III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, never mind gold. It's the only Winter Olympic sport the U.S. has never medaled in. At all. So what is biathlon anyway? What's kept our athletes off the podium for decades? And does the U.S. have a shot this year? Then, a few hours north, there's a little library in a quaint Vermont town of 4,500 people. Or a small Canadian town of 2,800. Depending on which side of the library you're standing in. We follow up on a listener question about big changes at a library right on the border. Then, looking for the perfect cup of tea to ring in Lunar New Year? Leave your Lipton on the shelf, your milk in the fridge, and your sugar in the pantry. We've got an interview teed up with the founder of Greater Boston's only traditional Chinese-style tea house. That's ahead this hour on the Curiosity Desk.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The Reverend Jesse Jackson, a pivotal voice for African Americans and the poor, has died, according to a statement from Jackson's family and the organization that he founded, the Rainbow Push Coalition. He was 84 years old. NPR's Cheryl Corley reports Jackson lived a life that bridged civil rights activism and politics.
I am somebody.
Throughout his life, Jesse Jackson inspired and encouraged millions with his trademark chant, I am somebody. He made a mark as a young aide to civil rights icon Martin Luther King Jr. He'd go on to push for a greater share of economic and political power for blacks and others with his Rainbow Push Coalition. Jackson ran for president in 1984 and in 1988. On his 75th birthday, Jackson took note of his long career.
I endured as a long-distance runner. I served, and I never surrendered my spirit to the forces of negation.
Cheryl Corley, NPR News.
The shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security is affecting the country's top disaster response agency. NPR's Rebecca Hersher reports FEMA is part of DHS.
FEMA supports state and local governments when hurricanes, earthquakes, and other disasters happen. With its parent agency shut down, FEMA will still be able to respond to emergencies because there's still a pot of money for immediate disaster response. But places that got hit by wildfires or floods in the last few years and are waiting for FEMA reimbursements may have to wait even longer, FEMA leaders warn. That's because there won't be money to pay all of FEMA's workers. Such delays will not be new, however. Unrelated to this shutdown, the Trump administration has withheld billions of dollars of disaster-related grants for states and is currently moving to cut thousands of jobs at the agency. Rebecca Hersher, NPR News.
The Trump administration has dispatched envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, to Geneva, the site of diplomatic negotiations seeking resolution to multiple global conflicts. One involves the Russia-Ukraine war, which marks 4 years next week. Here's NPR's Greg Myrie.
The Trump administration has met many times with each side separately, and they have reached the point where now the Russians and Ukrainians are at the same table talking to each other. But there's no sense that a deal is close. Trump is still leaning much more heavily on Ukrainians to make concessions, while Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says the Russians aren't serious about peace. Now, in the past, we've seen the Russians and Ukrainians reach some limited agreements on things like prisoner swaps, but no movement toward ending the war.
NPR's Greg Myrie reporting President Trump hosts his new International Board of Peace in Washington, D.C. on Thursday. The focus will be Gaza. U.S. stocks are trading lower this hour. The Dow's down more than 70 points. It's NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. As the world mourns the loss of Reverend Jesse Jackson, let's take a look back to 1971 when he was on PBS Street. No, Jackson wasn't with Big Bird, Elmo, or the Cookie Monster. He was with the kids of Sesame Street, leading them in a beautiful call and response, reminding them that every child is somebody.
But I just want you to repeat after me each time. Okay? All right, let's start. I am somebody. I can learn anything. My mind is a pearl. People are beautiful. We are people. Therefore, we are beautiful. Beautiful children will grow up and make the whole world beautiful. Right on.
Jesse Jackson died of complications from Parkinson's. He was 84. A federal judge has barred immigration and customs enforcement agents from conducting raids at churches across Massachusetts and other parts of New England. Mass Live reporting the ruling filed Friday by U.S. District Court Judge F. Dennis Saylor came in response to a lawsuit filed in July of last year by several local churches that argued that a new federal policy exposed their congregants to immigration enforcement during services and other church-run programs. 38 degrees. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Capital One, offering their premium travel card, Venture X. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. Details at CapitalOne.com. And listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We're streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. We are deep into the Winter Games now, and I don't know about you, but I've been reminded this past week plus just how impressive achievements on snow and ice are. Of course, the lion's share of attention here in the U.S. has been on snowboarding and downhill skiing, figure skating, ice hockey, heck, even curling is making waves in the TV ratings. But in the spirit of the Curiosity Desk, we're going to set aside those well-known and well-funded events and pay homage to a sport that The Athletic recently called beautiful madness. That's right, I am talking about biathlon, the sport that combines cross-country skiing with rifle shooting. Now, whenever the U.S. team arrives for an international competition, it is in an unusual position, the underdog. In fact, biathlon is the only winter sport in which the U.S. has never won an Olympic medal. So, why? And is that poised to change this year? Here to help us understand that is Susan Dunklee. She competed in 3 Winter Olympic Games in biathlon, 2014, 2018, 2022. Today, she coaches elite athletes who train at one of the biggest cross-country ski venues in the U.S., and it's right here in New England, the Craftsbury Outdoor Center in northern Vermont. A handful of Craftsbury athletes are in Milan for the Olympics. Susan, welcome to the Curiosity Desk.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here, especially during a wonderful Winter Olympics.
Yeah, indeed. So let's start at the beginning with biathlon, and just can you explain the sport as if I have never seen or heard of the sport?
Yeah, sure. So biathlon combines 2 completely different disciplines. You have cross-country skiing, where you're digging as deep as you can, your heartbeat's going 3 beats a second, you're breathing really hard. Then you come into the shooting range, and you have to shoot a .22 caliber rifle at 50-meter targets, 50 meters away. And you have 5 bullets to hit 5 shots. If you hit them, they turn white. If you miss them, they stay black. And if you miss any, you have to do penalty loops. You have to ski an extra 150 meters before you can go back out on the race course. Now, it's a race that's time-based, so you always start with skiing, you end with skiing, and you do shooting in the middle, and you'll do some ski loops in the middle too, but it's a really exciting sport.
Yeah. I think, for a lot of people who either are not familiar with the sport or just hearing about it for the first time, or maybe they're browsing on TV and they get exposed to it, each Winter Olympics, I think there is that question that comes to mind. And as you said, unrelated discipline is like, where in the world did this come from? How did we get a sport that is combining these 2 things? Can you give us a little brief history of the sport and why it is one?
Yeah. So I think it came out of the Scandinavian and Russian regions of the world, far north places that have a lot of snow. Skiing is a very practical way to get around the woods in the winter. So if you're hunting or you're doing some sort of military exercises and you need to get through terrain, skiing with a rifle on makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so that makes sense. And it just sort of turns into a sport. In 1960, I think, is when it first becomes an Olympic sport. So it's been around for decades as a competitive Olympic sport.
Yeah, and it's evolved over time, too. I mean, back in the 1960s, for example, they were shooting high-caliber rifles, and now we shoot .22 caliber rifles. Back then, the only type of cross-country skiing was classic skiing, the traditional diagonal stride. Now it's skate skiing, where we're going kind of side to side. There's been a lot of evolutions, but it's been pretty exciting. Women's biathlon didn't actually join the Olympics until the 90s in Albertville, which was pretty darn late, but I'm very glad it is there now. And I think it's one of the sports that has the best parity between genders in terms of like TV viewership, prize money for World Cups, start spots, all that sort of stuff.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking with Olympian and biathlon coach Susan Dunklee about what it takes to train and compete in a sport like biathlon. Before we get into the training and what it takes, can you just walk me through some of the logistics? Because, the idea that you're like on these skis, you're carrying a gun, you're sort of skiing for a while, you go into this shooting area. Like, are you carrying the bullets with you? When is the gun loaded? How do you then pack the gun back up and get back up? Like, just walk me through the logistics of a race a little.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you're approaching the shooting range, about maybe 100 meters out or so, you're really starting to back off and breathe. You come in, you get a little bit closer, you take your poles off and you hold them in one hand. Your rifle's on your back, kind of like on a backpack harness, and you can't take it off until you land on the shooting mat. You land on the shooting mat, you set your poles down, you take the rifle off, and then there's a magazine that is on the stock, and you have to pull that off. That has 5 bullets in it, and then you load it into the action of the rifle. You get into position, clip in, you're aiming, and when you use your breathing to really calm yourself down, you close the bolt, exhale, settle onto the target, squeeze the trigger. And each of those magazines is 5 shots. So between each shot, you have to bolt. So you pull the bolt back, push it forward again, you're on to the next shot. When you're all done, you take the empty magazine and then you put the rifle on your back, grab your poles, you're up and you're away. This whole process happens in about from the time you get on the mat to the time you get off the mat, about 25 seconds. So it's really fast.
It's all really fast. Yeah, that's wild. And how crucial is that sort of 25-second section that you're talking about there? I imagine something like a NASCAR race, right, where you have a pit stop and entire races can be won or lost like in this moment in a pit stop. Is it like that when you enter the shooting area? Are like seconds that crucial?
Oh, absolutely. Especially as the sport's gotten more and more deep with the fields, there's medals are decided often by seconds. You gotta be as fast as you can. I mean, if you spend 5 extra seconds in the range and somebody else leaves 5 seconds ahead of you, you have to catch up on skis, and that is not easy. It's a lot of work to close a gap on skis.
We're talking with Olympian and biathlon coach Susan Dunklee. So let's talk about training. Let's talk about the skills necessary to become a competitive biathlete. What are we talking about? Like, what are the things that these people are good at, and what are they working on, presumably year-round, to become an elite athlete?
Yeah, so to be a biathlete, you're doing a lot of pretty much the same base physical training as a cross-country skier. You're probably training at the elite level 700 hours or more in a year of just pure physical training. That you start out in May, you go all the way through the year, through November, then you start the race season. You're going to do things like roller skiing. You're going on the roads with these tiny little wheels and short skis that are about two feet long or so, and you got your ski bindings on, you got your poles, you hear this click click as people ski by. You're out in the mountains doing some long trail runs. You're in the weight room. You're doing all sorts of stuff. So like mountain biking, road cycling. But a typical training week in the summer, that's when you do the most volume. It's probably about 20 hours or so. And then you got to do some shooting sessions on top of it. Usually you do a morning workout, you do an afternoon workout, and they range anywhere from like an hour, hour and a half to up to 4 or 5 hours.
How does somebody find their way to this sport? How did you find your way to biathlon?
I grew up in this beautiful corner of Vermont called the Northeast Kingdom, where we have incredible cross-country ski trails. And I grew up as a skier. My parents were ski racers. My dad went to Innsbruck and Lake Placid Olympics for cross-country skiing. My parents met at UVM racing, University of Vermont. I didn't get into biathlon until my senior year of college. I had been a collegiate NCAA skier and had some good success there. And at the time, US Biathlon was looking to recruit top skiers and teach them how to shoot. And it's a lot easier to teach somebody who's already a good skier how to shoot than it is to teach a good shooter how to ski. And so, yeah, I think having a strong ski background is really important. Nowadays, we're trying to get more ski clubs that offer biathlon too, so you can start at a younger age. You can already be doing the skiing, but then learn shooting when you're like 12 or something like that, So it's a little bit easier to pick up.
Yeah, I mean, is the fact that these disciplines seem, seem so unrelated, is that a challenge in terms of recruitment? Like finding some, like as you just said, it's easier to teach a good skier how to shoot than a good shooter how to ski. But even in the world of skiing, to say like, hey, you're a pretty good skier, would you like to learn to shoot? Is that a barrier to entry, or is it just like, I don't know, some people go for it, some people don't?
I think the sport really attracts people who are hungry for challenge. Because you not only have to be a really good endurance athlete and be able to push your body to this incredible limit, you have to be able to deal with the uncertainty of being on the shooting range, and a wind gust could pop up and disrupt your rhythm, move the bullet. You have the psychological pressure of just thinking about the more you want to hit the target, the less likely you are to hit it. So you got to learn how to manage that sort of stuff too. I think there's more volatility in the results, so you can be top 3 one day and top 80 the next. You don't see that as much in cross-country skiing. So I think this sport really attracts people who are addicted to challenge and really like to try to do the hardest thing out there.
And sounds like a big piece of this, in addition to the sort of insane physical nature of the sport in terms of endurance, and then this combination of being like super active and then super calm, also psychologically challenging.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I think, biathlon teaches all these awesome life skills. I work with like junior kids now. And some of the things I like coaching is I think biathlon teaches you resilience. It teaches you to get up after failure. You're not always going to hit every target, and you got to be okay with that. It teaches teamwork. It teaches all these awesome things, which is really special.
So we said a couple times in the lead up to this moment now when we're talking that this is, the sport in the Winter Olympics that the U.S. has never medaled in. We've had some success in World Championships, including you, I think 2 second-place finishes in World Championships. We've had some wins in World Championships. What's going on? Why do you think this is? Why is the U.S. not more competitive on the Olympic stage, or haven't they been?
Yeah, this is always a storyline that hits every Olympics. It's kind of like, it reminds me of like the Red Sox team back when I was in college. They hadn't won the World Series, and I don't remember how many decades and decades and decades, and it was like this big thing they had to get over.
Yep.
You just need somebody to like break that ceiling and show that it's possible. And we've come so close, and I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves because the storyline cycles around every time the Olympics are there. You go from being the sport where nobody's really paying much attention for 3 years, 3.5 years even, and suddenly it's an Olympic year and everybody wants to be part of it. And I think that's overwhelming for athletes to manage, It's a lot of pressure. There's countries that you're going up against like France and Norway. Norwegians grow up with skis on their feet, they have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids that do these sports, and we have a very small number, and we're trying to be competitive with that. But we have, Campbell Wright got 2 silver medals at World Championships last year. He's had an incredible season, including the World Cup right before the Olympics this year. He got a medal, but the team's been a little bit off. I think, I think they had been hoping for a medal here. They had a great relay today. Campbell closed with brought him from like 12th to 5th in the last leg, which was absolutely incredible.
5th is the best finish for a relay for U.S. men's ever, right?
It's huge. Yeah, it's really, really huge. And so I think it's easy to forget that we get so fixated on medals that we forget to like notice things like that. Like there's an athlete that trains here in Craftsbury, Margie Freed, who got 21st in the women's individual, which is her best finish ever on the world stage. She hit 19 out of 20 targets, but it's 21st. And so people are like, whatever. But like for us, let's let's celebrate that, right? That is so cool to do that when it matters most. It's awesome.
I also wonder about we obviously, one of the pieces of the puzzle in terms of, having competitive athletes at the Olympic level is, infrastructure, money, sponsorship. We know with some of the, kind of more quote unquote popular sports, something like figure skating, there's a deep infrastructure and there's a fair amount of money in that to make it happen. What's it like for biathletes?
Very few biathletes in the U.S. are successful at all in finding any sort of sponsors. And there's not a whole lot of money out there to do the sport. Like some clubs have some partial funding. U.S. Olympic Committee, if you're high enough ranked internationally, you might get some sort of monthly stipend. But it's not a whole lot of money compared to your expenses, right?
Yeah.
You have to come from a decently well-off background to be able to make this work, or you have to be really lucky and really successful. If you win a World Cup race, I think you get like $20,000. So at the top end, there's potential there to make a lot of money. But you think of how many years you have to put in to get to that level.
Absolutely.
And you think of how many people are putting in those years who don't make it to that level. It's tough. So,
Susan, before I let you go, I have to ask you, as we said earlier, you have been in the Winter Olympics 3 times. What memories stick with you from those experiences? I mean, that's incredible. You're a 3-time Olympian.
Yeah, thanks. It was really cool. I think my favorite was Sochi. That was my first Olympics, 2014. Our athlete village was up on top of this mountain. You had to take a gondola to get up to it. And our races were at like 7 or 8 p.m. So we had these sunsets and it was 360 degrees with purple skies. It was an absolutely beautiful place. I remember being so nervous. You can't really, you've done a bunch of races before, but you don't really know what it feels like to actually feel that pressure until you're in it. And our sports psychologist would work with us, and he's like, you know what? Don't focus on trying to hit all your targets. Don't focus on trying to win a medal. Just perform well, and knowing what that performing well is for you is so important. So
good advice for the Olympics and in life. Susan Dunklee, Olympian coach and advocate for biathlon. She coaches elite athletes and people who are just curious to try at the Craftsbury Outdoor Center in northern Vermont. Susan, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to stay in that far northern corner of Vermont just ahead to follow up on a listener's question. What is going on at a library that literally straddles the U.S.-Canadian border? We look at how that tiny library is answering federal security demands. This is the Curiosity Desk on GBH 89.7 and streaming on YouTube.
Here in New England, we love our seafood. Oysters, lobster, fish and chips. But that journey from the ocean to the plate is risky and ruthless.
The name of the game is sharpen your knife.
I'm Ian Koss, host of the Big Dig podcast, here to tell you about our new season, Catching the Codfather, a story about one man's pursuit of the American dream in a brutal industry. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And the Bach Center's Folk Americana Roots Hall of Fame, presenting its annual induction celebration March 24th at the Bach Center Wang Theater, honoring influential artists with tributes, live performances, and an onstage dinner. FolkAmericanaRootsHallOfFame.org. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, providing coverage plans for individuals, families, employers, and retirees with benefits that help you live in your moment. More at MassGeneralBrighamHealthPlan.org.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We're streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. You might have been with us for a recent show when our guest, Aaron McCarthy, described a particular library that sits right at the international border between Vermont and Quebec.
And yeah, you can see the border. It's actually drawn on the floor of the building. The main entrance is on the U.S. side, but most of the books are on the Canadian side.
She was actually talking about the Haskell Free Library in Derby Line, Vermont, and Stansted, Quebec. It's actually a library and an opera house, and yes, the opera house is also divided by that international border.
I think it's a little bit more complicated these days, but it used to be you could just walk in. Whichever side of the border you were on, it served both countries, and you could just pop right in.
A little more complicated, to be sure. One listener, Julia in Cambridge, wrote us asking that we dig deeper into the controversy that, in her words, has, quote, banned Canadians from regular entry. Thanks for that, Julia. We are glad to explore this further because there is a lot more to the story. To that end, Sylvie Boudreau joins us now from Stansted, Quebec. She chairs the Board of Trustees of the Haskell Free Library and Opera House. Sylvie, welcome to the Curiosity Desk.
Thank you.
So what happened last spring when the Trump administration told the library it had to change how people enter the library?
Yes, for over 100 years, like 120 years, we used the only access really, it's an American door because the official address of the library is 93 Caswell Avenue in Derby Line. So it's a big, beautiful, big entrance. And for us Canadians to be able to go through that American door, we were using like 70 feet on the sidewalk. Okay. So before, a long time ago, that street was not blocked. Right now, there's big granite blocks, so people can cross with cars, but they can cross walking. And so we've been using that entrance for forever. So we didn't have to go through a port of entry, an official port of entry to enter the United States. So we were just going through on the sidewalk, walking on the sidewalk when the library was open. It was very strict in the way that you couldn't go off the sidewalk, you couldn't go into the village, you couldn't go and visit anything else. The only thing you were allowed to is to use the sidewalk and the entrance. But in March, I received an email by the person who's in charge of the USVP and said that we need to talk. And I knew what it was about. So as of October 2025, the access would be closed forever.
And to be clear, so access on this, American door, U.S. door, a person from your side from the Canadian side of the border can no longer walk down this sidewalk and in that door, but they still enter the library?
Okay, I want to specify something. A Canadian or a visitor that is in Canada or whoever would like to use the American entrance could go through an official port of entry. They could go, show their passport, come into Derby Lines and go to the door. So this is no problem. They cannot exit. They need to exit through the American doors. So when they told me that, I had already looked at it because I have to be honest, that person who's not there anymore, the person in charge of the USPP, he's been trying to shut down that access for over 2 years before he announced it. For sure, the election of Donald Trump in November, for me, when he was elected, I said, okay, that's it. We're going to lose our access. I was sure of that because that person was trying, to collect reasons, arguments to shut down the access, all in the name of national security, as usual.
What kind of incidents are we talking about, or examples that they were trying to collect?
Okay. I used to be a border officer for 20 years. So I know pretty much, the laws. So the incidents were not happening really at the Haskell, but around the Haskell. So we have a lot of people that are crossing illegally. Every week, I can tell you that. Every week, either they are going southbound or northbound. So is it because of the library? I don't think so. In 2010, few things happened. One big thing happens. There was an American that left some guns, and a Canadian picked them up and brought them into Canada. So that was a big thing. Also, before COVID, there were family reunions. So let's say we have someone in the United States that cannot enter Canada, and some of his family was in Canada, so they were meeting at the library. Family that haven't seen each other for years. And to be honest, on my side, a Canadian border officer, it's very borderline on the way that it's legal. Even if we say that inside the library there's no borders, it's kind of a Switzerland and all this. But to have people that wouldn't be allowed that in one country or the other, and they meet inside the library. So we stopped that, to appease these people. We said there won't be any more family reunions. But to come back to spring, so I had looked into, I have a door that it's an emergency door, that's on the side in the back of the building. And really, I can tell you, it's like 10 feet and you are in the United States. But the door is still in Canada. So this is when we decided to change the emergency exit door into an entrance for the Canadians. Yeah.
So for months now, Canadians and those visiting Canada have either been going the long way around through a regular port of entry, a border crossing, and then getting into the library, or they've been going through now what you describe as an emergency exit door. But you have a project underway that is a possible remedy called the Canadian door. What is the Canadian door?
Yeah, that's it. That's my emergency door right now. So we did a GoFundMe because this is an heritage building. You have to understand we cannot do what we want with that building. It's heritage in the United States and Vermont and in Quebec and in Canada. So everything needs to be approved. Everything needs to be submitted, and it costs a fortune. I can tell you that. So what we are doing, it's on the east side of the building, on the back. It's really facing the American parking lot. I'm telling you, you park your car and you can jump and come in through the Canadian door, which you cannot do because you are in the United States. So what we are doing right now is with Heritage Quebec, the door right now, it's the door, we cannot put any door that you can buy at Lowe's or whatever. It's a door that it's being done by an artisan. It's going to be in wood. We're going to try to recreate the same kind of door as the front door. After that, we had to do a two-space parking lot for people, handicapped people, because they need to have an access. Inside, it had to be rearranged, flooring, new windows, and the windows cannot buy vinyl windows. It has to be wood, special wood, painted wood. We need to do a roof over the entrance. all that is going to be, and she insisted into copper, which is ridiculous. We don't see it. As soon as there's going to be snow and ice, it's going to be destroyed. But what can I say? I mean, we had to follow the rules. And
so you're turning that emergency entrance into a proper formal entrance for Canada that mirrors the main door on the American side. And the hope here is that this is going to satisfy the demands of officials on the U.S. side and restore the tradition of how people are going to be using the library with a nice entrance for people on the Canadian side.
Yeah, because at the beginning, everyone was saying, "Oh, this is the back door." No. We are not a back door. No, we are. It's the Canadian door, and we are going to do the inauguration at the beginning of June. So everything should be finished by June.
So the Derby line has a population of just under 700 people. Stansted has about 3,500. Is this a lot of attention for what seems like a pretty quiet place?
Oh my gosh. Yes. It's been, I mean, like we say, we are on the map right now. After the announcement, after the visit of Christina, it's been crazy. And the last straw will be in June when we're going to do the inauguration. And this is a very major milestone in the history of the Haskell Library.
Speaking of history, the border between your two communities, Derby Line and Stansted, with the Haskell being something of a symbol of that, it's been through a lot of changes this year, but going all the way back to 9/11, how do the people in your communities feel about all of this attention and all of these changes that are surrounding them?
When all this happened, people were angry, very angry, frustrated, wanted to blame everything. But my message was one of resilience, unity, and we're going to be above, stand above all this. We're going to be stronger than any stupid regulations or whatever. And it created a bond, a stronger bond, it woke up the people. Because, after 100-something years, you take, I have it in French, but, you take it for granted that you have that place. Yeah. And all of a sudden, it was almost like, wow, it could be closed. So it kind of woke up people and made them appreciate and stand for something that is very symbolic.
Speaking of symbols, I sort of wonder, on the one hand, I completely understand if I'm on the Canadian side, this idea, well, if we have to go into the library, we're absolutely not going to go through an emergency door. And I understand the idea of we'll build a Canadian door so that there's a proper entrance, of course. At the same time, when I think about this library as a symbol, the idea that for so long, for 100+ years, part of the symbolism is that it was okay for people from the Canadian side to walk down a sidewalk and go into the same entrance. That is sort of the symbol. So while I understand the door being built on the Canadian side, is something sort of lost here?
Yep, I hear you. But if we're looking at another way, because, this world has changed, and I don't think it's for the better. So now fear kind of control the world right now. The way, everything, every time you're looking at the news, everything you're looking at, it's always fear. They want to create fear in you. So really, the problem is with that 70 feet of sidewalk. It's a fear of it's a fear, and it's something you need to control. It's the fear, the control. This is the only reason, nothing else. And if let's say person has a criminal record and that person crosses the 70 feet and goes into the Haskell to Canada, it didn't do anything bad to the country, to the United States.
Sylvie Boudreau. She chairs the Board of Trustees of the Haskell Free Library and Opera House in Derbyline, Vermont. She lives on the other side of the border in Stansted, Quebec. You can learn more about the Canadian Door Project on the library's website. Sylvie, thank you so much for your time today and for helping us answer our listeners' question.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
As I just mentioned, that conversation was inspired by a question from a listener, Julia in Cambridge. We always want to hear your questions about the news and anything else you might be curious about. You can go to WGBH.org, click on the Curiosity Desk to submit a question. Stay with us just ahead for a celebration of Lunar New Year that starts today and runs through early March. The holiday might make you think of the color red and dragons and gift giving. For our next guests, Lunar New Year wouldn't be Lunar New Year without tea. That's coming up next on the Curiosity Desk.
The news and conversations you're hearing today have been brought to you in part by GBH Sustainers, who make their gifts to the station in small monthly payments, like $10, $15, or $20 a month. It takes just a few minutes to enroll, and once you do, your ongoing monthly support will join with others to keep this station running strong. Learn more about how to become a sustaining member online at gbh.org/sustainer.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Landvest Christie's International Real Estate, an independent brokerage representing residential and investment properties for buyers and sellers across New England and the Adirondacks since 1968. More at landvest.com. And the Massachusetts Health Connector for Business. Premium value plans can help small business owners find and offer accessible employee health benefits. Learn more at mahealthconnector.org/business.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We're streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Happy Lunar New Year, everyone, and welcome to the year of the fire horse. Here at the Curiosity Desk, we are going to celebrate in style with our regular segment, The Secret Ingredient. This week's secret ingredient, none other than tea. Now, before we make it to 2 o'clock, that's about 20 minutes from now, our next guests have promised they can teach me how to make the perfect cup of traditional Chinese tea. I'm in Studio 3 and joined by James Beard award-winning chef Irene Li and Yin Guan. She's the founder of Broken Cup Teahouse, Greater Boston's first and so far only traditional Asian-style tea house right in the heart of Kendall Square. BrokenCupTeahouse.com for more information. Yin, Irene, welcome to the Curiosity Desk.
Thank you so much, Edgar. So excited to be here.
I am very excited for this. I love tea, but now typically when I have tea, I've got a tea bag, maybe some loose leaf tea, but more often than not, tea bag. I make some hot water. I pour some hot water into that. Then I put a lot of milk in it. Then I put some sugar in it, and I drink it. How is what we're going to do today different from that?
Yeah, it's kind of the total opposite, I would say.
Yes.
But yeah, before there were tea bags, there was loose leaf tea. It is the earliest form of tea, invented at least 2,500 years ago.
Okay, so that's a long time ago. So we've had it for a while. How did we get from loose leaf tea to tea bags?
Industrialization, colonialism, sort of, trying to make things more efficient, taking shortcuts. And that has brought benefits of convenience, and saving time. But there's also something really special, I think, about loose leaf tea, full leaf tea, single origin teas. That's what we want to share with the world.
All right. Well, I like it. I'm in for it. Irene, I wonder, would you consider yourself a tea drinker? Are you like a tea all the time person? What's your relationship with tea like?
I love tea of all kinds. I like it, from a bag with cream and sugar like you. And, Yin has been such a cool resource for those of us who love food and beverage, who really want to dig more into how you can experience tea and how different tea can be, depending on how you brew it, how old it is, if it's been aged, and so on. So there's this whole kind of deep dive you can do with Yin's help.
I love that. Deep dives is what we're all about here. So let's go on the dive. Walk us through, Yin. Let's start with what we have here. Can you describe? And by the way, if folks want to check out our YouTube channel, our stream, we are streaming this live, so we'll get some shots and some images here. But Yin, describe what we have, because we have a whole thing out in front of us here.
Yeah, so today I brought my gongfu cha or gongfu tea. Teaware with me. I have a gaiwan, which is the brewing vessel, the gongdao bei, which is the serving vessel, and a smelling and tasting cup set for each of us.
Smelling and tasting. So smell and taste are both an important part of this process.
That's right. And even maybe with smelling more important than tasting in the ritual of gongfu cha.
So this sort of makes me feel like whiskey. Whiskey is what springs to mind, right? Because when I've gone on like whiskey tastings, there's a lot of time spent with smell. I guess wine would be another one that people might think of immediately, and they say, okay, so there's a whole thing where we smell it, and then we have some. But it's as much about the smell as it is about the taste.
That's right. Yeah. So the tea we're having today is called 2025 Stone Chocolate. This is a fresh oolong tea from southern China.
Okay.
Spring of last year is the vintage. And this is a traditional dark roasted oolong tea.
So let's start with oolong tea. Oolong tea is?
In between green tea and black tea, defined by the level of oxidation.
Okay. And then roasted in what way?
Yeah. So oxidation means how long do you let the freshly picked leaves sit out to react with oxygen in the air and turn brown after they're picked? If you pick them and then heat treat them right away, whether that's through pan frying or steaming, you keep the leaves very green. If you let them sit out longer, for 2 to 3 days, the leaves will fully oxidize and turn brown. That makes a black tea. So oolong tea is anywhere between 10 and 90% oxidized. So it's a big range.
Huge range, yeah. Okay, so the type of tea where I would imagine there's a lot of variation then in taste, texture, all of that.
Yeah, it's the most diverse tea category. So in addition to the oxidation levels, you can have varying levels of roasts, whether that's electric or charcoal, and then you can also oftentimes age the tea as well.
Okay. Enough talk. Let's get into this. I want to. What do we do first? Do we smell some? How does it happen?
Yeah. So I've poured some tea into our smelling cups, but you don't smell this yet. You actually want to transfer it to your drinking cup first.
Okay.
So you can take that tall cup.
So I'm going to hold this up so make sure we can see this on the camera. So this is looks kind of like a shot glass.
Yep. The vertical one.
And this is kind of going into like a little bowl.
Yeah. Just pour with confidence.
Yeah, you're right. I was not as confident as I should have been.
And then when the smelling cup is empty, that's when you can smell it.
Oh.
Because it has the lingering aroma.
It's roasty.
All right, Irene says roasty.
So we source all of our teas directly from tea makers at origin. So it's the most fun for me that way. I can learn the most about the teas. This tea is made by Mr. Chen and his team. It's a 50-hour roasted tea, and they do it in 2 sessions of 25 hours at a time, sort of over the whole day, overnight.
And where is he located?
He's in Guangdong province, in southern China.
Wow. Okay. So smell under our belts. Now, do we taste it now?
Yeah. So we encourage big slurping for tasting the tea. It helps it to cool down, and you also get more of the aroma into your mouth that way.
Yeah.
Let's go.
All right. So just slurp it. It's high pitched. It's like right, like it feels like a high note. Like it's I don't want to say tangy, but it's like it makes my mouth feel the way it feels when something tangy hits it.
Yes, and try to pay attention to the transformation of the flavor, because it doesn't come all at once. But if you pay attention to 5 or 10 seconds after drinking it, it changes. And so, it starts with a roastiness, and then at the end, there's sort of a grapey freshness that you can catch.
Yeah. I caught it.
Oh.
That's true. Grapey freshness was a great way to describe that.
That's amazing. And Yin has such a great palate. She actually gave this tea its name in English, stone chocolate, for some of its tasting notes. It has a different name in Mandarin. But
What's the
Yin,
name in Mandarin?
It's called Da Hong Pao, or Big Red Robe.
Big red robe.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's not quite as descriptive for someone who might be new to drinking tea in this way. So Yin is both kind of an interpreter as well as the expert on the Gongfu tea process.
Incredible stuff. We're speaking with Irene Li and Yin Guan about traditional Chinese tea as we ring in the Lunar New Year. What happens now? Are we done? That was the tea drinking.
We're just getting started.
Oh yeah. That was just the first steep. We're barely.
Yeah. Do you want to brew the next one?
Sure.
All right.
Brew up another steep for us.
So we do multiple steeps. That's part of this sort of more traditional way of having tea. So explain what happens? Why do we do multiple steeps?
Yeah. So I don't know if you can see here. I packed a lot of leaves into this small guy one here, and I'm only using a little bit of water, and I'm trying to keep the steeps quite short. Okay, so that way we get a lot of
steeps
flavor.
in the time we have, and a lot of flavor.
Yes.
So I went for we only have so much time. You're like, no. There's a reason why I'm doing this that's related to taste.
Yeah. So traditionally, this style of having tea does take a little bit more time because the idea is to really pay attention to the tea from the beginning to the end. And taste the full sort of flavor profile and transformation from the outside of the leaf to the inside, one layer at a time, like this. So each steep is strong and flavorful and also very short, but then you do many, many steeps, 10, 15, 20, maybe.
Cool.
So let me pour us another steep of this tea here.
Thank you. And what I think is so cool is, think about the cup of tea you have that you just drop a tea bag in. This is like splitting that into 20 mini cups and evaluating the flavor for each time period that you're steeping it. I just feel like there's so much to be said and experienced here, and it's so amazing that we have Yin in the city who's introducing so many people to this.
All right. So we go through the same, but we do a pour it out, smell it, slurp it.
That's right.
Okay. So we're going for. I was a little bit more confident that time. I feel like.
Well done.
It smells slightly different. Not a ton different from what I remember, but slightly different.
Yeah.
Okay. Slurp time? Here we go. Is it okay to go?
Very much so.
Okay. Okay, that's good. So what happens to the tea? That's tasty. It's a little. It has lost some of that very pingy brightness for sure. A little bit of it. You know what I mean? Okay.
And then imagine 20 cups later, you're having a totally different experience. Yeah. So we wish we could stay with you all afternoon, but you'll have to take Yin's word for it that the tea really does evolve.
Yeah. Yeah, and you don't have to just take my word for it. You can come to our tea room.
Exactly.
Also. Experience it for yourself.
Well, let's talk about the Broken Cup Teahouse.
Oh, sure.
Where is it? How long has it been around? And what goes on there?
Well, we're a relatively new tea house, 4 months old. We are in the heart of Kendall Square, tucked inside an office building right next to the tea station.
The tea station,
of course. Yeah.
I see what you did there. Very clever.
So we are technically a members-only tea house, but it's very easy to become a member, and we are by appointment for members. Our focus at the tea room is on a high level of hospitality and service, and then also education about tea. So if you're interested in not just having a cup of tea, but really learning about tea and engaging with it, paying attention to the tea, appreciating it from beginning to end, we would love to host you and tell you all about our teas.
So we've talked a few times in the lead up to this conversation about, it's Lunar New Year, so we're celebrating with tea. What is tea's role in Lunar New Year? What does it symbolize? How is it, an integral part of Lunar New Year?
Totally, yeah. So for me, Lunar New Year is always about getting together with the people you love. Family and friends around a big table, oftentimes a circular table. And tea is one of those things on the table that's shared between everyone. And so it's also sort of a ritual where hosts pour tea for guests and younger people pour tea for their elders. It's an expression of hospitality, respect, and love. And it's a shared experience is the most important thing of all.
And how about for you, Irene?
I'm learning about Chinese tea just from Yin. Really, I think for us, I would say our family, growing up in Brookline, it was all about the food on the table and being together. I don't have a lazy Susan at home, but I'm thinking that maybe it's time for an upgrade. But I think the process of enjoying something together, spending that time together, and of course, if you're doing gong fu cha, like that is a lot of time that is part of that process. And I think in this moment where we want to slow down, we want to be connected, we want to have an experience, it's a beautiful way to celebrate.
You talk about sort of this communal nature of the tea drinking, in Lunar New Year. Is that something? How does that inform the experience that you're trying to create at Broken Cup Teahouse? Does it that communal aspect of tea drinking?
Yeah. So our motto, I guess, is experience beauty in a cup, and so I think that there's so much beauty in tea itself. That it can offer us, just from the richness and complexity of flavors to understanding the processing style and the labors of love that go into making it. But it's also about the beauty of the tea moments that we share with other people. So, if you're really paying attention to those moments, maybe you will cherish them a little bit more. Yeah.
That's really nice.
You also have a communal table in the tea house.
Yeah,
and you host groups, so people can share a flight, like a tasting, and experience that together.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking with Irene Li and Yin Guan about traditional Chinese tea as we ring in the Lunar New Year. I look at the desk in front of me and I see another cup of tea has been poured here. When did that happen? I sort of missed that.
I just keep it going. That's my
incredible.
job.
Do you do this for a living? Oh, wait, you do. All right, so again, we're going to pour out. I'm going to give a little. Oh, wait. What? So what was that? You went, why?
Yeah, I really like the balance of floral and mineral, like in the smell that time.
Okay. You have all the vocabulary to describe this, which sounds to me like that's a reason to do this more often so you can develop the vocabulary to describe what you're experiencing. Here we go. What was different about that for you?
There's so many facets of tea that, like, the details really, the devil's in the details, I guess. So because the tea soup was a little colder that time, it tasted pretty different from how I usually have it hot.
Okay.
So yeah, just like another interesting side to the tea that I don't get to experience as often.
So you were going to say,
I was just going to say,
get in there.
Wine gets a lot of credit.
Yeah.
And, you heard Yin say the vintage, the year that this tea
that
is
is exactly what I was going to ask, yes.
Tea can also be aged for decades even. I'm not sure. Yin, what's the oldest tea that you have on the menu right now?
On our tea room menu, we have a 1974 Lishan from central Taiwan. So I guess that makes it 52 years old.
That's incredible.
Yeah. It's, just thinking about the history that tea has experienced. It's older than me. It's an ancestor in a way. So I think that's really cool.
And is it like, take me a little bit more inside the world of like vintage. Again, like you point out wine, I think whiskey's the same. People in the world or people who are like serious fans, they kind of know which years and which regions were amazing or expensive or this, that, or that. Is the sort of marketplace for vintage teas that way as well?
Yeah, so I think there are definitely a lot of similarities and parallels where the most important thing is to start with really good base material, very high quality tea leaves to begin with, that are robust, bold, so that, that has the potential to age, because over time it'll mellow out a little bit. So you want to start with something very strong. And then over the years, you do need to do a little bit of maintenance to keep that tea kind of alive, we call it, as opposed to going stale or dying.
So what kind of maintenance do you do?
So oftentimes you want to drive out any moisture that builds up in the leaves. Okay, so for oolong tea, this is the main method, where once it builds up a little moisture, it starts to get a little sour, and so we want to re-roast it every few years or so.
Oh, interesting.
Just a very, very light re-roast to drive out excess moisture.
All right, we've only got a few seconds left. I want you to both just tell me why you love tea. Why do you love tea?
Oh, it's such a simple question, but yeah.
I know.
I love the feeling of tea. I love having tea together with people, and I think it's just such an amazing culture that only exists because of people over thousands of years sharing one cup of tea after another with each other. And I want to be part of that tradition, that transmission of the culture, and help keep it alive.
I love that.
Yeah. How about for you, Irene?
I think it's just a whole world in a cup. You know, Yin could tell so many stories about every tea on her menu, and we can then take it and experience it the way that we want to. I think that's just amazing.
Yeah. And it is the kind of thing, I mean, you know, on the one hand, I mean, I sort of think about this idea, you talk about the communal, like what you know, sharing tea with somebody else. And on the one hand, you can kind of get, I don't know, like in my head, you can kind of get precious about it. But it's also like, no, you're just like, you can just like hang out with friends or family and like just have some time together. It doesn't have to be important or special. It's just time spent together and like have some tea together, even if it's taken a long time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right.
All right. Well, we've been speaking with James Beard award-winning chef and cookbook author Irene Li and Yin Guan, the founder of Broken Cup Teahouse in Cambridge. Check out their website for more info and make a reservation at brokencupteahouse.com. We are now joined by Jared Bowen, who's stepping up to the mic. We're going to do our Paul McCartney and John Lennon thing here at the same mic. Hey, Jared, are you a tea drinker?
I am a tea drinker, and it smells lovely in here, and this is beautiful.
Yeah,
Gorgeous.
It's really, really nice stuff. Jared, what do you have coming up for us on The Culture Show in just a few moments?
Well, people might know that Frederick Wiseman, the legendary filmmaker, died yesterday, so we'll be talking to someone who knew him quite well for an outstanding Boston project that he did. That would be City Hall. We'll talk about Renaissance race and representation at the Alain Locke Gallery at Harvard University, which puts black art into the mainstream, and that was the intention of the artists who did that. We'll talk to Uli Lorimer about what it means to have this buildup of snow and how that helps our plants. And Mathew Shifrin is back to talk about traveling as a blind person.
Action-packed show coming up on The Culture Show in just moments, so don't go anywhere. As for us, that's it for us for now. The Curiosity Desk is produced by Aidan Connolly, Rachel Armani, Olivia Corcio, Hannah Loss, and Nicole Garcia. Patty Daniels is our steady hand. Our engineers, John LaClaw Parker. Special thanks today to David Goodman and Andra Massawa. We'll be right back here in 23 short hours, live on GBH 89.7 and live streaming on YouTube. Until then, I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Stay curious out there.
Bach's first keyboard concerto, that was Simone Dinnerstein on piano. Jamie Kamak here today for Greg Farisi. You're listening to WCRB.
Classical Radio Boston is WCRB-FM 99.5 HD1 Lowell, Boston, WGBH-FM HD2 Boston, WCAI-FM HD2 Woods Hole, WJMF-FM Smithfield, Providence, and at classical.org.
2 o'clock now, 38 degrees here in Boston. My head is in the clouds this afternoon. So here's Clouds from Debussy's first nocturne, Pierre Boulez with the Cleveland Orchestra. That was Clouds from Debussy's first Nocturne, Pierre Boulez leading the Cleveland Orchestra. I'm Jamie Kamak here today for Greg Farisi. There is a lot going on in the world today. We'll chat about all of it today in between Schubert's Unfinished Symphony coming up around 3 o'clock. Some playtime for this week's February break, Focus at 4, coming up at, you guessed it, 4 o'clock. And either an Olympics or Lunar New Year's Eve, Lunar New Year question for trivia today. Haven't decided yet. There's truly so much going on, so much to look forward to. But for now, we'll start with Raymond Leopard and the English Chamber Orchestra. Here's Hummel's Trumpet Concerto featuring Wynton Marsalis.
art project from 1935 to 1943, roughly. I keep thinking about what art policy could do at the federal level. I was actually just talking about this a little bit earlier with Abby Wolf, our executive director at the Hutchins Center, and just sort of marveling at that period of time, the amount of funding that goes towards developing these community art centers with these print shops, putting hundreds of artists to work, right, to create murals, to create prints. And then that alone, it gives artists, Black artists in particular, access to these technologies, to lithography and woodcut. And from there, they're off to the races. These artists, like a Robert Blackburn, goes on to found the printmaking workshop in New York in 1947. Fantastic show, Press and Pull, at the Mass Art Museum right now.
I just saw it last week myself after you pointed it out to me that it was coming.
Right, and so it's so amazing because he starts this printmaking workshop. It's the oldest community workshop in the country. He goes on to work with, the pop artists of the 1960s, right, as this master printer. So that's what's so exciting when you kind of think about, the earliest print in the show from 1836. Patrick Henry Reason, who does this beautiful small portrait of Granville Sharp, who is an abolitionist, and then into the present, where we actually included a print from our collection of Kamala Harris 2024 by Shepard Fairey, and her beautiful smile sort of looking out into the distance, right? And so it just, for me, I keep thinking about the materiality of print, even though we're all just kind of always stuck on our phones. We are looking at TikToks, which I sort of look at as video art now, essentially, sort of the experimentation and the playfulness of TikTok videos. But there is something so quite enduring about prints. The materiality of them.
Well, I want to go back to the WPA and really that early part of the 20th century. It's 1920s, 30s, 40s. WPA, of course, Works Progress Administration comes in at the 1930s. There's the Federal Art Project, as you say. Wouldn't that be nice today?
Exactly.
Instead of taking aim at culture, actually spreading the seed so that it can grow. And we have the Harlem Renaissance that's coming through. First, we should talk a little bit about the name change at your gallery, the Alain Locke Gallery. Who was Alain Locke?
Alain Locke is the first African American to earn a PhD at Harvard in philosophy in 1918. I just was recently trying to get a handle on his dissertation, started to read a little bit of it. I'm not a philosopher. I'm not an expert on aesthetics. Or I guess in some way I am, because I'm an artist and a curator. But what's interesting in his dissertation, he's already sort of thinking about how aesthetics are constructed, and they are related to taste, and that taste changes over time. It's a really important insight because he understands that there, all of these racist images, racist caricatures of Black folks all over, throughout and circulating, and you can still get some of these images on eBay. But Locke is just keenly aware of the fact that we can reconstruct ourselves, and so that's where this concept of the new Negro kind of comes from. There's actually, Skip has, of course, a new book out.
Skip Gates you're talking about. Yep.
So
who's an instrumental part of this gallery.
Who's an instrumental part. So the Hutchins Center is headed by Henry Louis Gates Jr. of Finding Your Roots fame, historian, literary theorist. Skip is very much a collector, a born collector, which is why we have two gallery spaces. But a lot of what Skip is thinking about in a book that he just co-edited with Martha H. Patterson, it's called The New Negro, History and Documents. They're sort of, thinking about the new Negro over time, a very kind of capacious, as we say in academia, a very kind of broad way of thinking about the new Negro and the way that various writers and scholars sort of chart the sort of first mentions of new Negro, like in 1887 and into the mid-20th century. But writers, Black writers, scholars, activists, ministers, each of them taking the new Negro for themselves and reimagining it. And it's something that Black contemporary artists continue to do now.
I'm speaking with Dell Hamilton, the acting director of the Alain Locke Gallery of African and African American Art at Harvard University. She's also the curator of Renaissance Race and Representation, which is on view through June 6th. Also free admission. We love to point
also
that.
Free.
I love to point that out. Locke is considered the father or the dean of the Harlem Renaissance. What begins to crack open there in terms of representation, especially as we see it on your gallery walls?
Yeah, so as I said, there are many sort of instances of the New Negro, but in 1925, he writes an essay called Enter the New Negro. It appears in a magazine called Survey Graphic. And it's where he sort of like charts out this manifesto of who the New Negro is. I went back to reread that over the weekend as well, and I had missed this the first time, but he pegs the New Negro's agency, Black folks, during the Great Migration, coming up from the South to New York, Chicago, Detroit, Philly, the New Negro in particular in Harlem, this sort of, kind of critical mass, right, of writers like Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston. It is a moment where, again, Locke has the foresight to sort of map out who he thinks this New Negro is. What's interesting is that he pegs this catalyst, this New Negro, as a figure on the national canvas, as he says, or a force in the foreground of affairs, but he pegs that the agency, the self-identification, that it's full of power and energy, and that it's tied to American democracy. That American democracy and its ideals of opportunity are hand in hand with the ideals of the New Negro and who that person or persons, him and hers and the theys, all of those folks can be.
As you said, so much of this work is still being done. On your gallery walls, you have artists who are blue chip artists, Jacob Lawrence and Elizabeth Catlett. Our own John Wilson were greeted by one of his works almost immediately. But a lot of works that people won't be familiar with. How do you describe that discovery that's still happening, that artists made these works decades ago to enter the mainstream, but here in 2026, people are only becoming acquainted with them?
Yeah, that's something that I think about all the time as an artist and a curator. I sort of fell into both of those things, partly because of just Skip's vision. I got hired as an events manager working for Skip got hired in 2003, many decades ago. And over time, he kept giving me all these curatorial projects. And as I was developing exhibitions, trying to figure out how do you develop an exhibition, I was also very much in contact with Black art scholars, Black art historians like Leslie King Hammond, who used to teach at MICA, or Deborah Willis, who teaches at NYU, or artists like Carrie Mae Weems, or my mentor, Maria Magdalena Campos Pons. What I learned from watching them, or them coming to the Hutchins Center to do lectures or conferences, I learned that for all of the reasons that we can suspect, systemic racism, sexism, etc., many of these artists were left out of these conversations. They're left out of the canon. And so for me, what that provided is an opportunity to go and read the work of these previous Black art scholars, art historians, and then sort of like devour that and sort of then distill that out into the world. And so that's what's also, as I said, quite striking. There was a show that was at the Cleveland Museum of Art, I think just last year, focused on Karamu House, which is in Cleveland, that also had a print shop. And it's an exhibition that was just up. I just bought the catalog, but essentially it talks about some of the artists who were quite prolific during that period of time in Cleveland at Karamu House, which was also a really important creative space for theater, for dance, and had this printmaking workshop. Langston Hughes was walking the halls of that art center.
Well, speaking of these, I always love, this is one of the things I love about this job, is learning about the circles that come together throughout history.
Right.
I love that you just mentioned your mentor, because as you were pointing out to me as we were walking through the show a couple of weeks ago, there were so many ties between artists, whether they were collaborating or they were mentoring one another.
Right. Fascinating. Something I just learned from going to the Press and Pull show at the Mass Art Museum is that Robert Blackburn went to high school with Richard Avedon and James Baldwin. At one point, County Cullen is teaching English at that same high school, DeWitt Clinton High School in North Bronx. Charles White and Elizabeth Catlett, they're prints are sort of flanking the John Wilson print of MLK, and the three of them have a really close working relationship. Elizabeth Catlett used to be married to Charles White. During their sort of last year of their marriage in 1946, they go down to Mexico. They're working at the Taller de Gráfica Popular, which is this really important printmaking community, collective space. A few years later, John Wilson goes down there to study. Even, Mrs. Kelly, Harriet Kelly, I hope she's listening. She's based in San Antonio. As she and her husband, Harmon, were developing the collection, they were also building their library. And there was a particular book that Harmon couldn't get his hands on. Harriet's mom, Lorraine, is overhearing this conversation, and she makes a call to one of the librarians at Howard University, and they're like, oh yeah, we have that book in our collection. We can get you a copy of it. And the reason why Lorraine knows this is because Alain Locke was her teacher at Howard University. It's kind of bananas. And so that was also something that I was thinking about very much earlier today with Abby. She's a lit theorist. She was Skip's student. So again, there's that pedagogy, there's that genealogy, but there's a way in which this kind of crucible of human beings who come into the world at exactly the right time that then sort of catalyze this literary movement, and then all of the trickles that sort of makes into modern and pop art and obviously all the way into contemporary art. Charles White was Carrie James Marshall and David Hammond's teacher at Otis in California. It's just bananas.
I always I hear conversations like this, and I think this would be the date I'd pick in the time machine when I get to go back and be in a certain circle.
Exactly. If I could be a fly on the wall.
Finally, I just want to ask, you have spent so much time, as you said, absorbing this and then putting it out into the world. What do you really hope people will leave the gallery with? I think at least certainly for me, I'm kind of inspired every time I organize an exhibition. There's certainly always a lot of hand-wringing with the wall labels, just using the right language, right, to make the shows accessible. But what I want people to sort of take from these shows is that art can still say something in a world that seems like it has all of these constraints. The fact that our ancestors, the Harlem Renaissance happens just a few generations, post-emancipation, right? And they're able to make this seismic shift in cultural production. And so that's what I always kind of think about. My parents are have roots in Belize and Honduras. They came here as immigrants. They chased the American dream. It's why I got to go to college and to work at the Hutchins Center under Henry Louis Gates Jr. It's like those things don't happen, right? Unless folks have a vision for the future. And there's a way in which, as I said, that these artists working during all of these kinds of constraints with racism and sexism, classism, et cetera, they were still forging ahead and developing a vision of what Blackness could look like. And now you have shared it with us, as well as those amazing collectors who had that brilliant foresight for their own curiosity, which makes it so special. Congratulations on the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Darren. It was a pleasure.
Dell Hamilton is the acting director of the Alain Locke Gallery of African and African American Art at Harvard University and the curator of Renaissance Race and Representation. The exhibition, which is free, is on view through June 6th. Coming up, we may be tired of the snow, but our landscape isn't. Uli Lorimer is here to explain how this winter's deep snowpack could make for a very strong spring for our plants. He's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
What does swimming have to do with college? Most students would tell you not much, but at MIT, it's a graduation requirement.
Now we're going to go down and put our chin in the water.
The first classes were just breathing, getting underwater, trying to float, and then you eventually progressed into different strokes.
I'm Kirk Carapezza. Why MIT keeps its controversial 80-year tradition afloat online at gbhnews.org.
Funding for our programs comes from you,
And the Boston Symphony Orchestra. This March, Yun Chan Lim performs Schumann's Piano Concerto and Renee Fleming sings excerpts from Nixon in China. April 14th, the Explorer Concert features Beethoven's Fifth anew. bso.org. And the Art Complex Museum in Duxbury, Massachusetts, currently displaying the Duxbury Art Association Winter Juried Show. Prints by Armin Landek and works by Massachusetts artist Mo Kelman. More at artcomplex.org. And MIT Federal Credit Union, committed to delivering financial services that help members bank with confidence. Memberships open to the public. More at mitfcu.org, federally insured by NCUA.
Discover a whole new side of your puppy at Nova's Can Dogs Talk documentary event. Science shows the potential of dogs communicating with word buttons. Join our panel for a screening of select clips when you fetch your ticket at gbh.org/events.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live on 89.7 and streaming on our GBH News YouTube channel. Snow is still piled high across the region, packed into dense banks along roads and parking lots, hardened by freeze after freeze, which means our fields and lawns remain buried. But there is an upside to all of this. That snow cover is protecting the landscape. It holds soil temperatures steady, shields roots from the damaging freeze and thaw and freeze again cycles, and can even reduce the survival of certain harmful insects. Joining us to talk about this and more is Uli Lorimer, Director of Horticulture at the Native Plant Trust. By the way, he is also the recipient of the 2026 Distinguished Service Medal from the Garden Club of America for his work conserving native plant species and restoring native plant communities. Uli, welcome back. Congratulations. This is a huge honor.
It is. It is. I'm just over the moon and incredibly humbled by it.
Well, we're going to circle back to this to talk about you, but this snow cover. I am a born New Englander. I've had it no more with the winter. I don't know what's happening to me as I age. However, you're making me realize this is a pretty spectacular thing for us.
It is. It is. And I think it makes me think about climate change as it's sort of a topic that we wrestle with a lot, and how to prepare our gardens and what effects does it have. And I think that it's like the inconsistency of one year to the next of whether we have lots of snow cover or not. That's the most stressful thing on the plants. And I think it's helpful to remember that snow is a natural part of the seasons, and it actually has a lot of benefits for plants and for the landscape.
Well, I want to go back to what you were just saying, because I have been wondering about this too. So if we think, I know the other areas of the state have had snow over the last 5 years. But if I think about Boston, we've barely had any snow over the last 5 years. So for those plants, as you were just saying, do they evolve in that 5-year span? Do they get used to not having the snow?
I think they tolerate it. But I think about last year, for example, where we emerged into the spring and evergreen rhododendrons are like such a foundational plant for a lot of gardens, and many of them looked awful. And they had a lot of winter burn, and it was because we had a really droughty summer and then a dry fall, and then it went right into winter where we didn't have the snow cover, and winter is actually one of the driest periods for plants, and not because it's drought like a desert, but because all available moisture is frozen, so plants can't get at it. And so they really had such a hard time replacing the water that was lost over the winter, and so the result was really awful looking brown, entire branches dying out. And I feel like that's evidence of how stressful those conditions can be.
So now that we're in this winter of 2026 and we have this snowpack, what is it doing for the plants and trees?
So as you mentioned at the top, it tempers the conditions. It's an insulator. So snow, if you think of it as lots of little air pockets, is an incredible insulator. But similar like to insulation in your home, the thickness of the layer makes a big difference on how well it insulates. So snow cover of, let's say, like 6 inches or less has less insulation value, but the more above 6 inches that you get, the more insulation it has, and the more consistent those conditions are at the meeting of the ground and above ground. And so it reduces this whole idea of roots and the crowns of plants getting heaved out during the freezing and thawing cycles that happen. The snow, when it melts, provides a much more consistent kind of like slow watering back into the soil profile, which is good. Snow captures, in fact, some atmospheric nitrogen, so there's even a small amount of like fertilization that happens, so that it just gives plants a little bit of boost as they kind of emerge from their winter slumber and dormancy and resume growth in the spring.
If we have all of this snowpack with all of this moisture, how does this affect our drought conditions?
Well, and I was just, it's a good question. I was just looking at a drought map that the state put out, and Western Massachusetts is back to normal conditions. The central part of the state is still in a slight drought, and the eastern portions in the Cape are in a sort of moderate to slight drought. But this can only help. I mean, this is sort of the difference between not getting any snow at all and entering into spring in a deficit, or having that snow cover that, as annoying as it is to shovel and navigate around, it actually does help replenish the groundwater table, which is important.
Well, we've been talking a lot about the ground, but what about our shrubs and trees if we're having this snow pile up, and there may be more to come this weekend if we're believing the meteorologists, and they've been pretty spot on, I have to say, so far. Sure. So we have another few inches. How do we take care of our trees? Can they support this?
Generally, yes. I'm a big advocate for proactive tree care. And so this can take a lot of different forms, which generally involves, if you have old mature trees, contracting a licensed arborist to come and assess the trees. And then before you get to winter, do things like cabling, things like canopy reductions and retrenchments, which are really important for large mature trees. And it just reduces the amount of weight that the trees have to hold. And no matter how much proactive approaches you can take, there is just a reality that snow and weight and physics and tree limbs does lead to failures, in as much as you can try to get ahead of that as possible. For trees and shrubs, particularly ones that might have pliable or flexible branches, I usually go out with maybe like a bamboo stick and just gently shake it off so that things don't crack as they get sort of opened up by the snow weight.
So they're different. We don't need them caked in snow because it's more damaging for them.
Yes, exactly.
I was also reading, I think you wrote this actually, about the ways that you were talking about the rhododendrons and what they do. I never thought of them as little creatures, but they kind of are. We know they're living things, of course, but what are some of the things that their plants and trees and bushes like rhododendrons are doing to deal with this?
Yeah, so I think of rhododendrons, and going back to those evergreen ones, I think of as like nature's thermometer. And so what they do is they can curl their leaves inward as a way to reduce surface area. And it's amazing. And they do actually do the same thing in the summer during drought periods too, because less surface area means less evaporative loss. And so the degree of how much you imagine them shivering can tell you just exactly how cold it is outside. And it's a really wonderful adaptation. You shed a little bit more snow weight that way as well. And then as soon as temperatures get close to freezing again, magically they unfurl and they're back to business.
Plants, they're just like us.
Indeed, in more ways than we know.
I shrivel in the cold and the snow too. I was wondering about road salt, and especially if people have plantings at the edge of their properties that are up against the roads. What does that do?
Salt deposition it's a reality in order for us to keep our roads safe and walkways and pathways and driveways and so forth. Salt actually has a negative effect for the most part on plants. And it has to do with how plants get water into the roots. So plants make the inside of the root saltier than the outside environment. And so water, because it's always seeking to strike an equilibrium, will passively move into the root to try to correct the salt imbalance, and then it gets drawn up into the plant. When the exterior soil is saltier than the inside of the root, water passively leaves the plant, which is a bad thing. And so when you get excessive salt buildup in soils, you can get salt burns and basically like desiccation kinds of damage to your plants.
What about the insects? As I mentioned in the introduction, this snowpack comes into play for them, and we know we like some, but not all insects.
Yes, and it's a combination of the snow, and as much as it's a combination of like properly cold temperatures. So I know we've had a couple stretches where the nighttime lows have been in the single digits, if not negatives. And this really sets back some of our worst sort of tree pests like hemlock woolly adelgid, emerald ash borer, organisms that are trying to survive inside the tree or on the tree over the winter. Those properly cold conditions kill off more. Some will do survive, unfortunately. But again, in context, mild winters allow more of them to survive and therefore more insects to inflict their damage the following season.
Well, I guess that's good news. We can tolerate those sub-zero nights. I'm speaking with Uli Lorimer, who joins us regularly. He's the director of horticulture at the Native Plant Trust. The subnivean zone.
Oh, I love that you said that.
You just sat up in your chair. You're so excited about this. What is happening in what is the subnivean zone?
It's one of my favorite phrases. So it's that sort of layer between the soil and the snowpack, and it's incredibly important for if you think about like mice and voles and things that don't hibernate over the winter, they have their own little world that is sort of protected between the upper snow, and the layer underneath, where they can make little tunnels and they can find food to eat. My visual is, if you've ever seen like a fox hunting, where they do this sort of, they jump up and then dive their head into the snow because they're literally trying to bust through to the subnivean zone to get their snack.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, it's a whole world. It's absolutely incredible.
Which can only exist in this winter a long time. But
yeah, as long as there's enough snow cover that exists, and there's a whole portions of our wildlife are adapted to that. When you don't have it, it makes it harder for them, or they have to kind of risk being exposed to other predators without the shelter and cover.
Because these creatures are living in sort of an in-between world where they're not exactly hibernating, but they're not completely active.
Yeah, it's sort of like winter limbo, if you like. So.
Well, as we mentioned, you are the recipient of the 2026 Distinguished Service Medal from the Garden Club of America. Of course, a very prestigious organization. What can you tell us about this and what it means to come from this organization in particular?
Well, first, it is a huge honor. And as I said at the beginning, I'm incredibly humbled by the recognition. Garden Clubs of America is such a fantastic organization. They have a long history in the United States as a group that promotes gardening, obviously, but also community engagement and community greening, and it just means so much to be recognized by this group. It's national in scope. I'm one of, I want to say, 8 other medal recipients for this year, so it's a very select group, and I had no idea this was coming. So,
nice.
No, which was also like a big surprise, which makes it that much more humbling.
Do you walk a green carpet, and is there a big ceremony? How does this work?
So there is a ceremony down in New York in April. Well, they have a national meeting, and they'll have all of the sort of presidents of all the garden clubs come, and they have an award ceremony, and then you get a really beautiful medal to take home, and all the bragging rights.
Well, it's for the Plant Trust that we've talked about species preservation. There's so many things people can hear that we've talked about. They can go back to our podcast and listen to again. Congratulations on that. Last question, which I always ask you. Now we're about a month away from spring, which is really exciting that we can say that. What should people be doing right now as they think about their gardens?
Well, so for folks that have indoor growing areas or hobby greenhouses, you're probably already planning out which seeds to sow, and you're planning out your vegetable garden and those sorts of things. My wife and I recently just went through and generated about a 3-page list of like projects for this year. So a lot of thinking ahead and what do we want to get to and how are we going to do it all in enough time. So lots of planning.
I can imagine you always check off everything on that list.
I try.
I can see that in you. Uli Lorimer, it's always great to see you. I look forward to seeing you again when we're talking about getting stuff into the ground.
Yeah, it won't be long from now.
Exactly. Again, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Uli Lorimer joins us regularly. He's the Director of Horticulture at the Native Plant Trust and the recipient of the 2026 Distinguished Service Medal from the Garden Club of America for his work conserving native plant species and restoring native plant communities. Well, coming up, Mathew Shifrin joins us to talk about traveling blind, from navigating unfamiliar hotels to the unpredictability of ride shares to how weather disrupts the senses. He's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
Indonesia has one of the world's highest rates of smoking among men. Not many Indonesian women have picked up the habit. Tobacco companies there have long pushed smoking as synonymous with masculinity.
So we are really surrounded by this marketing approach by the tobacco industry.
Hear that story next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Lyric Stage, presenting Penelope, a new musical starring Amy Doherty. It's the other side of the Odyssey you never knew. February 6th through March 1st at Lyric Stage Boston. Tickets at lyricstage.com. And the Peabody Essex Museum, presenting Andrew Gunn, Fashioning the World, a retrospective of the Singaporean fashion designer. You can learn more at pem.org. And PNC Bank, who believes when you pay attention to the details, amazing things can happen. Like when you check the pockets of a jacket you haven't worn since last fall and find $20. PNC Bank, brilliantly boring since 1865.
GBH Daily is a newsletter that keeps you informed, connected, and ready to go every weekday morning. You can subscribe today and get it in your inbox at gbh.org/daily.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. It's time for our recurring feature, AI Actual Intelligence, where we tap into the most interesting thinkers in our region for their original and algorithm-free insights and observations. We're joined now by Mathew Shifrin, founder and CEO of Bricks for the Blind, a Boston nonprofit that translates Lego's visual instructions into words, giving people with vision loss the opportunity to build. This month, we're focusing on his experiences as a blind traveler. Welcome back to the show. It's great to see you as always.
Oh, thank you so much, Jared. Same here.
So I have a suspicion, because of all that you've talked about in the times that you've been on the show, that you're a big traveler. How much is travel a part of your life?
Oh, it's a big part of my life. With Bricks for the Blind, I'm traveling every month to conferences all across the country, and that requires a lot of just logistical shenanigans.
So I suspected as much. So let's start talking about the discoveries that you have made, starting with hotels and what that experience is like negotiating your way through and in hotels.
Oh, that's an experience. So basically you come there, you check in. Well, first you need to find the check-in desk.
Yeah.
That is not easy. They put their check-in desks in places that are obvious for sighted people, but not so obvious for blind ones if you don't quite know where the line is.
I'll just interrupt for a moment to say, I can't tell you the number of times recently where I've walked into a hotel, I can't even find the check-in desk. It's weird that they are designing them to be out of the way now.
That's very reassuring.
So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt. Well, I did mean to interrupt, but anyway.
Like, check-in desk is lovely. Okay, you're fine, you check in, and then I have a bellhop show me where my room is and how to get to the emergency exit. But then you have the battle with the elevator. And the battle of the elevator first starts with finding the button. I was in my hotel, wanted to go down to the fitness center. And I, for the life of me, there were two elevators, one across from the other. I, for the life of me, could not find the doggone elevator button. And I was tapping around with my cane, hitting the walls. I was disrupting this lady so much that she came out of her room and said, "Sir, would you need help? You've been smacking walls for the past 5 minutes." And I said, "Ma'am, do you know by any chance where the elevator button is?" She says, "Oh, yes, I'll show you." Grabs my hand and moves it down. Apparently, the elevator button is at groin level.
Oh.
It is the least intuitive elevator button placement that I had ever seen. And there was a sign above. And I thought, oh, well, if there's a sign that has a map, it must be right underneath. No. It was at the level of my groin. I would have never been able to find it. Okay, fine. I find the elevator, deep breath in, deep breath out. I'm going to go to the fitness center to do a workout. That's great. I get to the fitness center, and there are weights there. Okay, there are 15-pound. I do some exercise with those. And then I want the 20-pound ones. So I take the weights that are to the right that are a little heavier. They have some mystery symbol on them and then the number 0. And my print number recognition is rusty. So I'm like, well, this must be 20. I start curling them and something is wrong. I am very weak, or these weights are very heavy. So I'm able to just do my 10 reps, and then I want to leave the fitness room. That is where the problems start. Because every time I exit the fitness room, I end up by the door to the swimming pool. So clearly, there is a different door that I need to find. The next 10 minutes are spent wandering around the fitness center, just wandering around the walls, colliding with the same treadmill and the same elliptical. And eventually, thankfully, I'm able to find this this exit door and get out. And I call my girlfriend at some point and I say, hey, I really had trouble with my weight exercises today. This thing next to the 0 looked like a triangle with a small leg and the top cut off. And she said, well, yeah, that's the number 4. You were doing 40s instead of 15s. I was like, oh, that explains a lot.
Well, so this is an interesting. I love these psychological things, though, because you think that you couldn't do 40, perhaps going in. You would never pick it up. But then what happened after you realized that maybe you could do it?
Exactly. You just force yourself into it, like it or not.
That's why you're a little stacked today, I'm realizing.
I suppose.
So then how do you get back at... First, and how did you know you were by the pool?
There was a braille sign that said pool next to another door, and you could hear people splashing. So you assumed that was the pool. But the rest of it was just a kind of mental map. And you said, okay, I've entered through the pool door, and I am straight across the room. There must be another door. So I'm just going to go around the perimeter of the room and hope that I will find this other door. And so the room's a rectangle, and you just move around the room. And the rectangle, the trouble is it has also various alcoves where the water bubbler is, or the heavy bag is, or whatever. And so you're trying to account for those alcoves as well. And because touch is sequential, unlike sight, unless you hit your object with a cane or yourself, you won't know that it's there. Thankfully, after much grumbling and confusion, I was able to find that other door and thankfully make it out into the freedom of the hallway. But at some point, I got so desperate that I said to myself, okay, I'm going to force you to do another workout if you don't actually are unable to exit this fitness center. Now, there are a couple of ways that make this easier. There are apps for your phone that will connect you to a sighted person, and they'll have access to your camera and they'll be able to see what you're seeing. One of them is, for example, Be My Eyes. Another is Aira or Ira, A-I-R-A. And they're basically like customer service. Oh, excuse me, sir, could you help me find my shoe? Oh, sir, can you tell me if this is expired, etc. But at a certain point, I was just like, I'm already here. Yes, I can call for help, but it's kind of funner trying to figure this out on your own. Mind you, 30 minutes later, it becomes significantly less fun.
I would imagine. Well, do you find yourself, maybe we've already given us the insight into this, but can you necessarily scan a room? Or in other words, what was different about this workout center that you couldn't just get the visuals down?
The workout center had equipment that was it made sense and it didn't make sense. There was some equipment around the sides of the room that you knew already. Okay, there are 2 bicycles on one side, there are 3 treadmills on the other side. But then stuff was also positioned diagonally. So there was an elliptical diagonal to one of the treadmills. And then there were also these weird alcoves that the mental map gets messed up when you give it weirdly shaped alcoves that you also have to contend with. And so what you had to do is make a map of just the general room and then kind of fill it out as you went and bumped into stuff and just hope that your map was accurate enough to get you back to that door. And it was just interesting because afterwards I came back later and I was like, oh, I want to try the heavy bag. I found the boxing gloves, but I couldn't find the heavy bag. And I'd already explored the room. I knew it existed. But I just, no matter how many times I wandered around this room, the heavy bag just eluded me.
How stubborn are you? If you don't want to go onto the app and have somebody help you.
I'm not that stubborn, but at some point
I'm pretty stubborn, by the way. I'll just tell you, because I think I would spend a lot of time too.
True. It's just at some point I was hungry and I was like, okay, I'll give myself 5 minutes. If I'm not out of here after another 5 minutes, I'm going to call for help. And it's interesting because amongst blind people, there are a lot of opinions about how independent one should be. And there are groups of blind people who will claim that if you are not able to get out of this fitness center on your own and will need to use an app, then you need to work on your independence training skills, young man, because you should be able to get out of any room we put you in. And then there are other blind people who are like, if you have an app, just use the app. And so opinions differ widely amongst blind people as to what you should do in a case like this.
And so I'm sensing that yours is somewhere in the middle, depending on the hunger level.
Exactly, exactly.
Do you find that hotels, do they try to be somewhat consistent with where they put things and lay things out? Clearly the one you were in wasn't, with its elevator button at crotch level that you had to discover. But how do they typically work?
I mean, typically, thankfully, they're laid out in usually a reasonable fashion. So you're able to figure out that the buttons are usually not at crotch level. And usually rooms are laid out fairly similarly. But some elevators have touch screens. And that's awful because the touchscreen is usually outside of the elevator. So you're supposed to press the button, and then of the floor you want to go to that's outside the elevator. And then you're going to go into the elevator and then hope that it delivers you to the right floor. Because those types of elevators, they usually don't have floor announcements, nor do they beep, because they're just having lights that light up next to each floor. So touchscreens are really hard to access. There are certain apps that might be able to help you, but they're not very reliable.
That is fascinating because we're seeing more and more of those, and hotels think they're great for moving forward with technology, but yeah, that doesn't help you.
Absolutely, and you're just jabbing at this thing, hoping that by just the luck of the poke, it'll get you to where you need to be.
I'm speaking with Mathew Shifrin, who joins us every month. He's the founder and CEO of Bricks for the Blind. Today we're talking about traveling. So I've barely made it out of the hotel. Actually, I don't want to leave the hotel yet because I was wondering what the experience is like in finding a restaurant and negotiating that with menus.
Well, this hotel is fairly large. And so oftentimes I got so frazzled at this hotel that I felt like the check-in desk was always moving. You got out of the elevator, and then if you turn the wrong way, the check-in desk disappears somewhere behind you to the left, somewhere. But basically, you wander around until you find someone who sounds somewhat authoritative, or oftentimes you just look as lost and confused as you can, and then people will come up and ask you for help. In terms of the restaurant, thankfully, I would go at times when it wasn't very busy, and the host was able to just lead me to a table. I was able to follow their voice or grab their arm. And in terms of the menu, sometimes they would read it to me, but oftentimes I just read menus online in advance so that I don't have to futz around with print menus, even though you can scan them with your phone. But I personally, I just want to be prepared, unless the waiter has some great advice about the latest special that's not on the menu.
Well, I was wondering about this too. You say listen to somebody who may be able to help you. Do you find that I guess it's hard to believe in New England, but do you find that people are kind and helpful? I don't mean to disparage New Englanders. As I've already said on the show, I am one, but people don't always pay attention, and we find that people don't always step forward to help.
Depends on the person. As long as you look very confused, someone's going to help. And worst case scenario, if someone doesn't help, then you can use one of those apps. I often find if I'm trying to get somewhere and I'm, in Cambridge at an intersection, a lot of times people are just going to walk by. But if someone if they just see that you're confused, then they can deconfuse you. But I wouldn't expect everyone just to drop everything. That's when you could use one of those apps. But generally, New Englanders are very kind. Even though I've seen scary cases where blind people have been in T stations, and some guy said, "Oh, I can help you," and the blind person said, "Yeah," and then they realized that they were being brought to a food counter, and the person who was helping them was like, "Hey, can you buy me food?" It turned out that they were just a random homeless person. And thankfully, a member of the T was able to intercept and get them to their station because they were their platform because they were late for their train. But still, it's kind of a case like you never really know.
That is extraordinary. I want to ask you one more thing. By the way, we have so much to talk about. We're going to make this a two-part series. We'll talk about more travel, especially Uber, which I think is very serious when you're back next month. But I want to ask you about the weather and being outside and its impact on your experiences.
Snow is awful. It's like a thick blanket has been laid over everything. And you can't really hear, all your distances are messed up. So you can't really hear the people around you, and you can't hear cars. Everything sounds very muffled. And also, it's just really difficult navigating in snow with a cane because it gets stuck in all the snowbanks. And not only that, but all the objects that you would normally use as landmarks, driveways, curb cuts, etc., are completely blocked off because they're just covered in snow and you can't feel them with your feet or with your cane. And so you're just wandering, you're in no man's land, basically, snowy no man's land, hoping that you might find a larger landmark, mailbox, traffic light, etc., that will somehow put you on the right path.
Which is all just changed overnight. It's so fascinating what you bring to us. As I say, we have run out of time, but we're going to continue this conversation next month when we see you. Mathew Shifrin, thank you for being here as always.
Thank you so much.
Mathew Shifrin joins us every month. He's the founder and CEO of Bricks for the Blind, a Boston nonprofit that translates Lego's visual instructions into words, giving people with vision loss the opportunity to build. They're always looking for volunteers who can help them, by the way. To learn more, go to bricksfortheblind.org. Thank you for listening to another edition of The Culture Show. You can tune in tomorrow, or, we love this, join us live at the Boston Public Library for this month's Wednesday watch party. Callie Crossley, Joyce Kulhawick, and I will ask you about the 1996 snow-crusted classic Fargo. Does Minnesota Nice and Minnesota Noir hold up today? It's only about 90 minutes. I watched last night. If you have an HBO Max subscription, you can watch it there. I'm Jared Bowen. Have a great day.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.